it live. It still tells me that the video is private. I don't know why.
I'll let you know if it shows up.
Yeah. I mean, it tells me that we're live, but I can't actually see it, so.
Yeah, let's see if it goes live at all on my side.
It says live. Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, there it goes. It's loading for me. Okay.
It's just, I think, a bug on the
It's always a bug.
Yeah, on the stream manager thing.
No,
Clothes better be coming off.
That's like a going inside joke. What's going on, Fangs? That's got to be one of the best.
Yeah.
Constantly commenting things happening. So what's going on, everybody?
Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna base it off of OBS and reading the chat here, guys. I'm gonna try and read the chat a little bit more of this stream because I don't really have any questions for Metal571. Yeah, I do have a few. That's
fine. I mean, we could start with Q&A, which is unusual.
Yeah,
done that before, have we?
We might as well. All right, so I'll just I'll introduce this here. So this is This is so we're live now. This is episode I don't even remember anymore. With Metal571. It's probably number 3 or 4 with you, I think. I think you're becoming a regular guest on this channel. But in any case, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna focus more on the Q&A kind of stuff, viewer Q&A, rather than a series of more constructed interview questions, because we want to see what everybody else is asking Metal571 in lieu of his usual Saturday, what used to be his usual Saturday Q&A sessions. So we'll try and do a little bit of that here as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Is there any? We might as well just start with some questions from the chat right away.
Someone said I was a little bit quiet.
I'm just turning you up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good way for us to get the levels right here.
Yeah, I'm at the normal volume for myself. I mean, I can turn up just slightly more, but I'm not going to mess with it too much since you're adjusting it. All right. I thought I saw a question early on here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, the ALS. I guess I'll read that one. Is the ALS an upgrade from the 650 or the 660S? Whoa, that's an unusual question. But I can see where you're coming from there.
Wait, is the question which is the better upgrade, or is it a question of is the ALS an upgrade from both?
It says, oh yeah, I think you got to clarify that a little bit, because it is an upgrade from both of those. But if you're asking which one it's closer to in tone as an upgrade from them, probably more the 660S actually.
Yeah, when I heard it, I mean, it sounded like well, see, to me, I have a mixed opinion about the 660S, because I find that it's not really I wouldn't say the 660S is a straightforward upgrade over the 650.
Oh, he did say from both. Yeah, that's...
Oh, yeah, from both. Okay.
It's not as direct an upgrade. I think someone's still saying I'm low. I don't know.
I got you.
Okay. I don't want to keep messing with my gain.
I got
you adjust the gain. Yeah, the Autor is a little closer. Actually, probably quite a bit closer, because it's got much more upfront mids. It's a little bit... The ALS with the perf suede pads morphs it enough to be a little closer to the 6X0s, but the Autor just straight out of the box, even with the stock pads, sounds a lot closer to the Sennheiser, I think. So
if you, I mean, just jumping off that question, if you were to say the most straightforward, if you were to pick 2 headphones that would be the most straightforward upgrades over the HD 650 or 6XX, what would they be in different price categories?
That's what everyone's looking for, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think the Alex is pretty close for relatively cheap for an upgrade, and that's what, $699, I think. And so it's got more upfront mids. I would say you can go to the Clear after the Alex if you want to upgrade even more. Slightly different for me. There was less upper mids. Both of those focals have a little bit more treble. Actually, probably quite a bit more treble. It just depends on what you're listening to. Mm-hmm. Than the Sennheisers, though. So as in mid treble, peaks somewhere around, I think you usually say 8K, 10K, something like that, somewhere around there. So both of those do. If you're going way higher price, or actually an even more direct upgrade is probably the Aurora's Audio Borealis. I haven't heard the production model yet, so I don't know for sure. But that's also in there at $899. So somewhere around there. I can't think of anything that's like really super high end that sounds kind of like the Sennheiser off the top of my head, though. I don't know. Maybe you can.
So for me, it would be the Auteur in that sort of like between the 1K and 2K price
Oh
point.
yeah, okay. I mean like Summit Fi stuff. I can't really think of something way up there.
Yeah. But I also think we'll see what happens with Borealis. I mean, I'm hopeful that like I get a chance to review that here pretty quick. But yeah, my suspicion is that it's probably going to be that. But from memory, I think the Borealis might be closer to the HD600 in tonality, so maybe a little bit more
Probably,
like,
yeah.
let's say, more linear, more like classically neutral. Whereas the HD650 6XX maybe a little bit more mid forward sounding.
Yeah, the 580 is really what I think. Rock was targeting. So yeah, less.
Yeah.
Not as much like a 650 for the Borealis as much as it is a 580 kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But for I'm just trying to think of like for a, let's say, more commonly available headphone, because I think, yeah, like they're building them right now. Like it's sold on the website, but I think you could go there and order them, and they're building them, something like that. So for a more commonly available headphone, I'd probably go with the Clear or the LX, or Elear with the clear pads. But I think that those bundles, I don't know if they're still available as well. But those would be kind of the same. Yeah. In any case, I think we've probably answered that question. I don't know if it gets any better than that though, above like $2,000. I don't know what else I would really recommend. For
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to back up here a little bit. Is the Alex worth the money? Yeah, I mean, I think, as Metal571 was saying last time, the Sundara is the one that's really worth the money.
Yeah, it's.
And then LX is like, I don't know if it's as good value as the Sundara, but it's also really good performer, I think, for the money. That'd be my take on it, at least. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what I said last time. I thought that was weird. Like, I didn't think there was that much variance, but there was some variance between the two Alexas I reviewed. Like, I got one,
yeah,
and then max setting was telling me like, no, it's supposed to be better than that. I was surprised that you don't like it. And I got another one, and I think it was slightly more detailed, but I never directly compared them. So, I mean, it's 6.9. I mean, given all the build quality and the general decent, very unusually good F4 kind of thing, I can see it being worth it. But yeah, I don't know. Value is too hard. I don't like value. Value is too hard to judge.
Yeah. I have to clear up something that I misrepresented in the last live stream that we did. About the driver that's in the Alex and the Elear.
Oh, right. That was very interesting.
And so, yeah, like I somebody correctly pointed out in the comments for that one that the difference, while there is a difference in the voice coil, it's not that one of them is formless and the other one isn't, or frameless, or whatever they call it. The difference is actually that the Elear/Alex uses a frameless voice coil or formless voice coil that is aluminum with a copper coating, and then the voice coil for the Clear is all copper. Now, I went down the rabbit hole on this a little bit, and I found it actually very interesting, because you'd think that because aluminum is lighter, that it would be less stuff to move, but then remembering also that copper is a better conductor, so apparently the full copper voice coil does allow for a little bit better, let's say, detail. I don't know if that actually is where it shows up, but
or just different. Yeah, I don't
know if like that directly translates to better performance, but that's the claim, at least.
Right. 'Cause I feel like if conductivity is better, then you get more sensitivity rather than.
Well, it is lower impedance. I think the Clear is lower impedance, as far as I understand.
That makes sense then.
By a little.
Yeah, that's probably why. I don't know. What do I look like, an engineer? All right, anyway.
But anyways, I hope that clears it up, because it's not that they don't use frameless.
It's not what we thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a difference in the voice coil. It's just not what I was saying it was in the last one. Moving on. I mean, we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's how these go.
I'll let you pick the next one.
I don't even know what to pick. Let's see.
What's
Is
your...
Here's
Yeah,
the
go
one.
ahead.
Is the ALS as detailed as the LCD2? No. I don't. I don't know. I don't think so. I think I actually compared those two. Did I compare those two directly, or did I compare it to the Otor? I can't remember now. I think I compared those two directly because I was thinking about buying an ALS for the longest time. But even though it has a much more natural sounding frequency response right out of the box, because I EQ the LCD2, it ended up having more technicalities that I thought were better for what I needed. This very very specific answer there, because like I can easily see people wanting the ALS over the LCD2 full stop, even though it's more expensive and in some ways it's not as well performing. So yeah, that's a tough thing to answer. Those two are, well, hopefully ZMF can send some more stuff to resolve because you need more of that.
Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to
You
review
didn't do the ALS, did you?
ALS, no. I heard it,
Okay.
and I liked it, but I haven't had a chance to actually spend a lot of time with
it's much more interesting in a quiet environment, yeah.
I'd love to do... Actually, and that's another thing, is like I need to get into some of those Audeze ones that you have. I mean, obviously the LCD.
No,
we
don't want to add another shill to the club here. We can't be doing
Well, but I mean, being able to do a comparison with similarly priced,
Right.
planar versus dynamic like that would be
Yeah.
nice. I have to... I'm backing up here. Is the... Okay, this is one that I think I can answer. Is the HE1000 SE worthwhile upgrade over the Aria? So I want to say no. Especially if you don't do EQ, like I find the HE1000 SE to be something where if you don't have much for an amplifier and you don't plan on investing in an amplifier, that one is very easy to power. It is better for technicalities. It does have better, from what I can tell, at least, detail retrieval, and better. It's got a better sense of stage depth, I find, even though the Aria is pretty good. But I don't think that, like, if you're not going to EQ it, I find that the HE1000 SE's just got too much air trouble, like above 12K. It's just, everything sounds just too kind of like pulled apart almost. So I'd say if you're not planning on EQ it, I would skip the HE1000 SE. I would go for the HE1000, what is it, V1? One of the other ones. Or
that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, or go for the all the way for the Sysfara. That's like I know it's more expensive, but like I would go for the Sysfara over that. If you're gonna make an upgrade from the Aria, I think the only thing really that makes sense is to go all out high end.
Yeah, do they have anything in like isn't it just kind of a jump to the Sysfara? I don't think there is much in between except like the SE, I guess.
Yeah, the SE is 3,500 and the Sysfara is 6K, but like
that's what it is now,
as you were
okay.
saying, like I don't know if anybody actually pays 6K.
Yeah, nobody actually pays that because of the markup and dealers and all that stuff, but it's still just walking the price ranks. Yeah, it makes sense.
Release a Sysfara,
Two?
Light Junior, Sysfara Junior.
Sysfara Junior. Yeah, I mean they would do that probably. So
yeah,
I like this one. What do we think about elitism and snobbery within the headphone community? There's a lot of that, and
I'll let you.
I have always said, at least in the last couple of years, I've always said, I'm just going to tell you what I hear and what I think about something. I'm not trying to tell you you're not allowed to like whatever it is. Like people always point at the Nighthawk review as like, oh, this guy's way biased against the thing and all that. And it's like, I just don't think it sounds good. I mean, that doesn't matter if you own it or not. I mean, yeah, it's painful to hear somebody I guess you trust say that something is terrible, but if we say everything is great, then we turn into, I'm not going to name drop any websites, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So,
yeah.
that's what I think anyway.
I think there's a number of, like, things that when I see... So, for example, if I see something on Reddit where it's somebody really praising the DT 1990 Pro and then recommending it, it makes me feel a little bit like, oh, I wish this person had a chance to compare side by side with all these other headphones. Something like that. Just not because I don't want them to enjoy, the DT 1990 Pro. Like, I think it's fine if you EQ a bit. But I just think it would be nice to be able to kind of give people the breadth of experience that, you know, getting to try out more than just the one headphone that they're going to buy would allow for. Because a lot of the time when you buy a headphone, you don't have that opportunity. You're buying one headphone and then you're like, oh wow, this sounds amazing, you know, because it's an upgrade from whatever it was that you had, but it doesn't give you a comparison relative to everything else that you could have bought. And then that's where a lot of the pushback on negative reviews comes from. I find it's a lot of people saying, how could you say that this wasn't as good as something else or not worth the price? I have this, I bought it, and it sounds amazing to me, right? And then it's like, yeah, but you didn't try it compared to everything else, right? So I wouldn't say that that's necessarily like elitism. It's more just that there's an element of experience that I think not everybody has the opportunity to
yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of. I think that's sort of the root of all arguments that come out in this hobby. Is just like, it sounds amazing. Yeah. How can you possibly say it doesn't sound amazing? Because we've heard a lot of things, and most people, unfortunately, don't have the opportunity to hear all the stuff that we have. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how I got to this point where manufacturers are willing to send me things, but I guess there was enough people who realized that they agreed with me for some things. I don't know what it. I don't know. It's just slowly ramped up, but like. Yeah, it's still personal at the end of the day, and as long as people know, I think the most important thing is to know what the target sound you're looking for is, because all of us have a slightly different preference on that, and I mean, bright, dark is useless without a relative comparison. That's also it too. But yeah, the root of the problem is, you know, people don't get to hear all this stuff that we get to hear and directly compare, and even I don't get to directly compare everything. Like, we often have to go off of wow, I just failed there. They go off of auditory memory, and that's a really unreliable thing. That's like actually one reason why I removed my DT 1990 review, because I didn't have a DT 80 at the time. That's just the obvious thing to compare to. If you're not directly comparing, it's hard to judge, especially detail differences between headphones. Very hard to judge that from memory. That's tough. So
it's actually something I'm kind of struggling with this one right here. This is the ADX 5000. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's. What do you even compare that to? The LCD3 or something?
No, this is the thing is, like, price wise, it's like $2,000, but I think its competitor is the HD 800S.
Okay.
But only because it's this has the craziest amount of air, like. This has air of like one of those like high-end planars, but like maybe a little bit more balanced in the lower treble, like less, like the LCD4 kind of does the dip and then the crazy air.
Yeah, right.
This has the air, but not the crazy dip.
So it's got everything. I remember. All I can remember about that headphone is it had a lot of resolution, and that might just be because it had a lot of air. I could be fooling myself at a meet from that. So it also had a big 5K peak or something. Yeah, definitely no recession there. So
yeah, there's from what I've again, this is part of it is from auditory memory, but it's also partially because I'm weirdly comparing this against the closed back HD 820 for trying to identify detail, right? And in my mind, it's like, okay, they're very close in that sense, but obviously the frequency response for this is way better. But trying to if I'm thinking of the ring radiator driver of the HD 800S, I mean, they're doing a similar thing with the HD 820, just the frequency response is totally weird there. So if the detail retrieval for those is pretty close, then it's not the worst to compare it to for something like this. It's just again auditory memory and then also it's like, how much does the frequency response impact the representation of that detail retrieval?
Yeah, that's why that's why I always use EQ, because I'll EQ things and remove peaks and be like, wait a minute. Because something that I don't think it's mentioned much, I know we do need to go back to the questions here in a second, but something that I don't think it's mentioned much, and I've failed at this personally, is that when there's an upper mid-range peak, or at least something that I think is an upper mid-range peak, which is everything, around ear resonance at 3 to 4K, I sometimes hear that as grain, and it's not always. When there's harshness to the sound in that region, sometimes it fools me into thinking a headphone is, more brash and thus a little bit grittier sounding. But it's really not, because if you take an EQ to it, it smooths out perfectly. And I'm always like, how is this? What? So it's difficult to separate frequency response. Of course, if Sean Olive was in here and be like, obviously all headphones have detail.
It's all frequency response.
But,
Yeah.
no, I don't mean to rag on the guy. He's done some great research, but no, it's tough. Like judging detail is very difficult, and everyone falls for peaks or dips being more or less detailed because they do sound like that sometimes. But anyway, actually, somebody else had a question that I probably have an ability to answer, which is DT770 is just terrible. Bass is not controlled, way too much trouble. How come people like it? Is it unit variation? And this guy has the 32 ohm version. So, as far as I hear, so I talked to Auditory about this, about the DT770, and he claims that it doesn't matter what impedance you have. It's just there's a lot of variation from unit to unit. He's measured a couple of them, which is slightly surprising to me, but slightly not. I mean, even the K371 I'm wearing, the review unit versus the one I own, sounds slightly different when I compare them directly too. So I feel like some of the cheaper dynamic headphones may not go through the kind of QC and matching, unit to unit, maybe between drivers, but not unit to unit, that some of the more expensive headphones go through. And even them, obviously, Audeze is an obvious example. There's still some variation up there. But the 80 ohm driver version that I own now, which is pretty old and thus burned in, it's going to start a fight, is not as bright as the 32 or the 250 ohm models I've heard. So that's why I like it. But yeah, so it's a lot of it is probably unit variation, but I think the 80 ohm sounds slightly different. In my experience, the 80 ohm versions do sound different than the other two. They're not nearly as bright, at least. Bass, I have no idea. I've heard some 80 ohms with not very strong bass. I've heard some with stronger bass than the 32 and 250. So I really don't know. So I'd have to buy 3 of each impedance and then listen to them all. And so I'd have like 9 DT770s floating across my desk, and then I'd finally be able to tell you maybe some idea of what the thing is supposed to sound like. Anyway, it's definitely a problem though.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe one day review one of the newer DT 770s, compare it to the older one, just to see. I see so many DT 770s everywhere because it's like it feels like it's just sort of like they're
used in studios
default
a lot.
studio headphone that everybody has. And I always see that and I go, I wonder if that's gonna help with the recording or hinder it. I don't know if that's.
I'm hoping, and the most of the time I see them, they're being used as monitors where sound quality, I mean, honestly, doesn't really matter that much. Right. It is kind of helpful to have a bass boost probably when you're recording, so you can hear the beat that you're trying to sing or play an instrument to. I don't know if we need that much trouble, but But another thing that is also a really big problem is the pads are going to change people's perception of that headphone hugely. Like when I bought my first 770 for my 770 review, the pads were really worn out. I bought it on eBay, and I listened to it, and they were so thin and not like they're supposed to be plush, really plush, but they were like really soft and they compressed a lot to the point where the upper mids actually sounded forward, which is the exact opposite signature of that headphone. And when I replaced the pads, I was like, oh my god, this is like a whole different headphone. So that also impacts people's perception of that thing. Those beyerdynamics are pretty interesting. But anyway, that's what's going on with those things. It's bizarre.
I got another question here for you. So what else is there for $1K, $1,000, other than the LCD2 that has a similar performance and responds well to EQ? What would be your pick for under $1,000?
I really want to review the Ananda because that would seem like the obvious answer to me in my mind, because I haven't gotten around to that yet. It seemed, but it does. From what I know, and I think you can probably corroborate this if that's even the right word, is the Ananda's like impact and slam is not anywhere near even like the Aria, for example, and probably not as good as the LCD2. LCD2 is decent in impact; it's not amazing. So I think Ananda's probably behind that too. But Ananda's frequency response, when I put that thing on, I think it was not this year, but last year, CanGen, I was like, dude, this is really close to even my preference. And I know that that's like one of your reference headphones, probably, if you owned one, I suppose.
I don't own one. For me, the Ananda tuning would be my reference.
Yeah.
But I think the performance was pretty good, but like when comparing to the Aria,
Yeah,
it's like there's
behind,
a clear
yeah.
difference there. Yeah, like for like soundstage depth and everything.
Yeah, and that's not surprising because the Ananda is supposed to be the efficient model in the lineup. I don't think
Yeah.
Aria is that hard to drive, is it? I don't know. I haven't tried it.
Not super hard to drive, no.
Yeah, but it's not as easy to drive as the Ananda, at least. So that was kind of what you lose there. Like, I find that a lot with the really efficient headphones. You do lose some of the slam. You do lose some of the resolution, at least. 4Z is probably the most stark contrast example of that. I don't know why anyone would pay the same price as a regular LCD4 for that thing, but anyway.
I mean, what do you think about that, though? Like the trend for things to get easier and easier to drive. I mean, is that something? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Or does it matter?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And I think there's a disconnect when it comes to that between manufacturers.
Yes.
And either like the average person and audiophile people. Like there's a huge disconnect between these three categories because manufacturers look at the market and they say, oh, more and more people want to plug this into a MacBook, so we should make it really efficient because we have a larger market there. And the audiophile community goes, but you're giving up all this performance, but for doing that, we have amps, dude.
Yeah.
And both of them have a good point. So it depends on who you are. Like one of the reasons why my LCD1 review was really good was really hyped. I don't know. It wasn't really, but one of the reasons is because it was very efficient. Now, it's unusual to have that kind of resolution in the treble specifically at that, efficiency. But generally speaking, I'm probably 90% of the people in the chat here have an amp already. And so that completely changes everything. So it really depends. You have to be careful about what you're describing, what a headphone is intended for that.
This is 420 ohms, the ADX 5000.
Yeah. Oh, they went higher than the... I remember the R70X was a big deal because it was like 400 ohms. They went even higher now. Wow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's the kind of thing where, like, in my mind, that, like, pick an amp. You can drive it. It's not, it's not like one of these planars that requires, and even then, like an LCD4, you can run that off of a fairly inexpensive amplifier if you run it balanced. Right?
789 will run it just fine.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think both the fact that amps are getting more easily, like they're getting cheaper for the power output that they have,
definitely plays into it a lot. I agree.
And just audiophiles have them, and then on top of it, it's like we're not at the point yet where we're actually able to properly, bake the amps and DACs into the headphones. I mean, maybe the Panda transcends this, or the LCD1 closed.
Yeah, they're clearly working on it.
Yeah, they want to get there, but I don't know if it's good. I think 10 years, 5 to 10 years. I'd give it that.
It's a little bit out. Yeah, I mean that's really the dream though, is a lightweight, very high resolving headphone running lossless Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And just sounds good. I mean, that's like what I think of as one of the best. And then I think at some point we'll probably end up having, I hope it's optional, but I hope we'll have, DSP built in that you can play with as well if you want to, not just EQ DSP, but, virtual surround and whatever. That's thinking really far ahead. And I think that's one of the last things that Tile also said before he retired. It's like, this is the direction things are going, is wireless. The direction things are going is built-in DSP and amps, that sort of thing. But and so to close out the original question, in my opinion, anything that costs like, I don't know, say like $1,500 or above, I don't think the manufacturer should be worrying about how easy it is to drive. I mean, that sounds kind of ridiculous. But it depends, because the reason why things like the MX4 and the 4Z even exist is apparently because Audeze works with the studios in California, and they had asked, hey, we just want to be able to plug into a mixing console. We don't want to care with huge, big, powerful amps everywhere in order to run the headphone at the volume we need. So they created it. But for the audiophile community, that doesn't make any sense. So again, but in my opinion, I don't think you need to worry about efficiency when you get up to the really, really expensive stuff. I think that should be like, give me a 600 ohm planar. I don't care. If it sounds amazing, like blowing everything else out of the water, people will buy the amps to run it. Are you kidding me?
Yep. And then there's even an opportunity to partner with the amp manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
There's always,
Definitely.
especially like at, various shows and stuff like that. It's like, can it run these headphones?
Yeah,
a lot of
I
amps
know.
were built specifically for the HE6 because it was like, that was the
Right.
question. But in any case, we should probably move on from that question.
Yeah. Anyway.
What is here's a good one. What is the best ZMF for classical music? And I know the answer.
I probably don't because I don't own a Verite. But no, I think you
no,
always
it's not the
said.
Verite.
No, I think you always said that the Verite is a more flavorful one, and I think I would agree with that. It's not
Yep.
as strictly neutral. I think. So I'm guessing you're going to say the Auteur then would be
Yes, I am
the
going to say
most
the Auteur.
tonally correct, and I agree with that. Headphone for classical. So if you're going to buy a ZMF and you're going to listen to classical and you don't need a closed back, then yeah, Auteur, I would agree.
Yeah.
It's definitely it.
Let's see. I'll let you pick the next one here. I'm just sort of getting lost.
One of my friends says, give us thick with 2 C's headphones. I think I had a ZMF Classic the last time he asked that, and I was showing that. The pads on the Audezes are pretty thick too, but
thick headphones? It's got to be the head audio headphone.
Oh, the headphone beats that. Yeah, you're right. You don't have one around, do you? I don't.
No.
Oh my god,
no, that
hilarious.
I think that one's doing the rounds. I don't know where it is now.
The most chunk headphone.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's kind of a joke question. Why don't you pick one for yourself? Someone asked if this was an interview.
No, we're just doing viewer Q&A, guys.
It's not supposed to be. Either of us are answering.
Yeah. Let's see. I was gonna say, will any of you review the ZMF Verite closed? And the answer to that is yes. When we get sent one, and we're sort of at the mercy of whenever one becomes available for reviewers.
As far as we know, Zach is such a busy guy with all that stuff, so it's
I think
difficult to procure one.
I might have heard this incorrectly, but I thought they were like in the process of like moving something or moving to a different space or something like that.
Even larger space. It's funny because I think they've.
Or maybe they already did.
Once.
Yeah, maybe they did, and then it's maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
All right. Oh, let's see. There's a lot of stuff where it's like I haven't actually heard it. Somebody asked Ananda versus the Focal Clear.
Oh.
I mean, to me, that's like, do you want a planar or do you want a dynamic? I mean, the clear is also more expensive. I think it's, if you want slam and dynamic punch and impact, got to go with the clear. If you want, let's say, planar instrument separation and like bass extension and honestly, the tonality I think for the Ananda is even just a little bit more to my taste, then go to the Ananda. The only issue that I have with the clear is that and the soundstage for the Ananda is it's not as like front and center in my face. It's a little bit further forward. But my only issue with the clear is that occasionally the consonant sounds are a little bit sharp, a little bit bright there, just at around 8K, 8.5K. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've only heard those two briefly, and I don't think I've heard the Ananda in a quiet environment yet. But I did hear the Ananda BT in a quiet environment, and something was missing from that. I think you said that does not sound the same. I totally agree. So, yeah, the clear though I like a lot actually, mainly because it's more detailed I think than the LX, and it has less upper mids. I mean, how can you not win with me by doing those two things? But it is still a little bit, it can get bright. I think if you're listening to mainstream music, it's probably going to be a little too much. But if you're listening to classical or something really well recorded, then and like someone literally just said as I was saying that, I like the clear sparkly treble. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I think it's a great headphone. It's a little expensive, I think, for what it is, again. But, always ask for that dealer discount, obviously.
It does go on sale, though, too, I think.
And it goes on sale.
Yeah, for like $1,100 or something once. I was like, oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah. I still think it's a really good headphone, but...
I don't. And it's a more normal headphone, too.
Oh, yeah. I don't
it's a way more comfortable headphone than
the Ananda. To know for sure. But someone was saying LCD2 versus LCDX a while ago. Those are like... way different. Like the 2F, which is what I have, is definitely not as high resolution as the LCD-X. I mean, actually, I would just point you at Max's review. He did the X and the MX4 versus the GX recently, so that should help distinguish these things. which I now have. I just haven't listened to them yet. Sorry, guys, I didn't get a chance before I was on the stream. I was actually about to do that earlier, and then I got wrapped up with trying Zoom, and we decided not to use it. So, but I'll have some thoughts about those on my Twitter, the MX4 and the X and GX I own, and the 2F I own, all that stuff. So yeah.
I think Max's conclusion on that was that the GX was the best one to buy these days.
Yeah, if frequency response without EQ is what you care about, then yeah. But I compared the GX and the 2F directly the other day and pretty much concluded that if you're not EQing, then yeah, the GX is definitely better out of the box, but the 2F is more capable.
That
the phasers and the frequency response is very weird. It's like there's a 6K peak actually that I probably didn't mention that's a little bit higher than the 10K peak on it. And then there's a hunk at 1K by about 3 dB, and there's a obvious huge recession at about 4K. And I only bring it up a little bit because I'm allergic to upper mids, but like if you're a normal person, you might need like 5 or more dB to pull the 4K back up into line. And then I add a small bass shelf to taste. But so there's a lot going on there, and I think I posted the GX EQ recently on Twitter, and I just brought up 4K by like 2 dB and added a bass shelf, and was like, this sounds right now. So it's really a lot closer. It just doesn't resolve quite as well. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's pretty crazy that, I mean, the LCD2F has been around for so long.
It's gone through so many revisions that, like, if you try to describe what the LCD2 sounds like, you have to be very specific, which I should now do. I'm talking about the 2018 LCD2 with the headband. Oh, it's behind me somewhere. I'm not even looking at the camera. But yeah, I think the last revision was 2016, and then the most recent revision, they didn't change the sound. Before, it was the 2018 revision, only added the headband with the suspension strap, which is very helpful. And then I know you liked that along with the lower weight of the GX. And then in 2020, I think just this year, they started using mesh on the outside instead of fabric or something like that. But anyway, yeah, the sound hasn't changed, I don't think, since the 2016 rev. I actually wasn't even into the brand until that rev, because I heard that it was a big revision on the drivers and how they sounded. So,
well, because I used to own the original LCD2.
Oh, really?
Like back in, and I ended up selling it and buying the HE500 instead.
I can understand that. Yeah,
I still have the lobe strap from.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it's great, actually.
It is great, yeah. And I mean, that's, everybody asks me, like, they see when I use the Verite on that $3 headphone stand, it looks like it's part of the stand. They're like, "What is that headphone stand? I want that stand." I'm like, "No, that's just the lobe strap."
You don't want to do that. Yeah, because the problem with that headphone stand, I think you were saying, was it just stretches the hell out of a suspended headband or whatever.
I would never put a headphone on there that didn't have like the metal part is fine if you like hang it from that. Yeah. But I wouldn't put anything that could scratch or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
Leather or any material like that. Let's see.
Yeah.
What is? Oh man, there's a question here that I am not gonna ask. I'm gonna skip that one. Let's see. The Sesvara versus the LCD4.
Debate our favorites of all time. That's changed. It's actually difficult for me to say whether I like the 1266 TC or the Dianify DMS pad or the LCD4 more, because I need to have all those at home, and that's very hard to get those three in the same room probably. So I don't know. This, as far as it's an awesome headphone, though. I mean, I'm not. It's not really a debate. It's just that, Resolve likes music that is recorded correctly, and so if you play it back on an LCD4, it might sound kind of dead without EQ, and it doesn't on the Sesvara. So that's a lot of it right there. Plus the weight difference is enormous. I think that's a really high achievement. I didn't think about that as much as when you said it, I think, in your review, where it's like, what is it, like 350 grams or something?
This is Vara.
And yet it can, yeah.
No, I think it's like 420, or I think it's around 400. It's
still, that's like ridiculous.
For that. I could be wrong about that. Maybe 380. I don't know. Somebody can correct me. And
like a planar headphone that is on the same level as the Audeze, but in detail, but yet is like, what is that, like 300 grams lighter? That's That's really awesome. That's impressive. And that thing's using some metal on it too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I forget what Fang Bian said about the way that they were implementing the, they have what they call the stealth magnets there, where the idea is that they round
I think
the
it's
edges.
basically phaser idea. Yeah, kind of
It's
the same
similar,
idea.
yeah. But he was telling me, I asked him about like, how are you able to achieve this? How are you able to get it to be, lighter? And is one of the ways that you do that by, doing this sort of rounding the edges of the magnets and stuff. And he said, well, it's actually like everything goes into this. Like every parameter gets tweaked independently, and we try and make sure that the variables all line up so that we can produce something that's not too heavy. And actually, if you go back far enough, like their original HE500, HE5, and HE6, they were all like over, I think, 500 grams as well.
Yeah, they're
when
pretty
they were
hefty.
doing, their original double-sided stuff. And so when they finally moved to the HE560 and the other stuff, he said it took them like 3 years or something to develop that, because they knew that it was like the biggest limitation for them.
So is the Susvara still double-sided? I don't remember.
It is, as far as I know, the Susvara
Okay.
is double-sided, but in general, like he was telling me it's not as complicated as like many of us think, where it's like double-sided
okay.
versus single-sided. He said, there's a lot more that goes on to it, where there's some that's like almost like a hybrid style, where it's like double-sided, but it depends how the trace goes, so it's not actually double-sided. You have some on one side, mostly on the other. So it's a lot more complicated now than just saying like single double versus double, because we would in the past it was always like the comparison between the HE500 and HE560 was, well, one was single sided and that's why it didn't sound as good. But I think these days there's a lot more advancements in planar tech that have been done that make it more complicated than just saying one or the other.
It's very impressive, because a lot of the time the magnet weight becomes a huge problem with planars. So producing something that can do that that's pretty impressive. Yeah, but it is everything though. It's not just obviously the magnets are one or two sided. It's all the design. Yeah, I'm not surprised. That makes sense.
Someone says, is detail driver size plus frequency response? I'm gonna say we don't know. Probably not just driver size. I don't know if that really correlates. That's maybe more to do with like dynamics.
I'm gonna say that detail may have nothing to do with either of those.
Exactly.
Actually, at all.
Probably stiffness and rigidity and driver mechanics than
anything
else.
Abyss was talking about how they went through all kinds of different materials on their channel before they found one that didn't have the resonances that they found annoying or something like that, and all kinds of really exotic materials to use for the film. Before they found the right one. So I don't know. It's pretty complicated. I don't know how you measure all of that, but
we'll get there.
I guess they A/B'd to the point where they couldn't get anything better by A/B'ing against something else, and then stuck with it. And that's what the 1266 TC is, something like that. That's probably what. Sure, if DMS watches this, he'll correct me. The soundstage equals how far the driver is. There's some truth in that. One of the reasons I was asking Audeze, I was like, the LCD1 doesn't have very wide soundstage here, and it seems kind of obvious to me. And they're like, yeah, that's not surprising because the drivers are not very far away. And I was like, oh, that's at least plays some role. And I know that pretty sure that, I don't know if that's obviously not everything, but it plays some role because switching the pads around with the Atticus, it was really clear to me that the Ori pads, which were the thickest, had the largest soundstage, and then the Icon pads slightly smaller, and then when I went to the Universe pads, it was the smallest, and that's the thickness of the pads had a lot to do with that, at least.
Same thing with the Verite. If you use the Universe pads, which are way thicker, it actually physically pushes them further away from your ears, and the soundstage is more expansive and kind of 3D with these pads. Whereas if you use the Verite pads, which is they're still angled, but they're considered the flat pads because they're way smaller, that actually brings it closer to brings the driver closer to your ears, and it doesn't have as spacious a sound. Still,
I forgot that the Verite pads were actually the thinnest ones. Those things are it's amazing that your ears don't touch the inside of the thing using them.
Yeah, but there may also be a correlation there with like presentation of detail and proximity to the ear, where if it's too far away, you may lose a bit of that sense of, or maybe it's not detail, but that sense of the technicalities, the even speed potentially. just because it's traveling a further distance. But I'm not. Again, it's one of those things where it's like I think there's probably a lot of variables that go into even driver angle and stuff like this. Like
right. There's driver angling, and the material of the pad seems to make some difference as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much. I actually completely disagree with you, Max, on Soundstage is highly overrated because okay, I see. He's thinking, okay, there was no context to that statement. That's why I got confused. It's like people saying that headphones can sound like speakers is definitely very overrated. I don't think you can ever get to that point.
Yeah.
When something is so close up. But like I was going to say, like, you can't just say that Soundstage doesn't matter, because like I've spent a good deal of money to upgrade mainly Soundstage over some other things. It's like going from the Sennheiser's Soundstage to the LCD2 is such a large jump in stage, let alone like an HD800 that,
Was that for, your competitive gaming career for FPS positioning?
That was way later. Actually, I did used to play Battlefield with the HD800, and that was pretty great.
Yeah, right. I know that's what a lot of people did. They were like, I want to get the most furthest kind of stage.
Yeah. Actually, people have really debated the HD800 stage lately. Like, the imaging is apparently not very good. I don't know. I don't really have as much of a problem with it, but the DT880 is great for gaming because the imaging is good too.
Yeah, I think it only really becomes like, for me, Soundstage is not the most important thing. Like, I tend to agree a little bit with that idea, but I like, it's only noticeable when it's bad. Like, for example, the HD6XX Soundstage is a problem. Like, I find, at least
it's not very good.
So it's got to be at least a little bit better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot better than, like, if people have never heard what a Soundstage is before, the Sennheiser will be like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. But yeah, once again, like, people don't have that much experience with all these different headphones at various price ranges. It's actually hard to get, at least here.
The Auteur Soundstage is one of the craziest as well, for me at least. But I find it's all, like, everything is just placed a little almost too far away from me, which is another. It's like, if it's headphones and it's two speaker, like, for me, it sounds almost a bit weird.
Yeah.
But
well, then you can just add crossfeed, because obviously everybody has a mini DSP, like 2x4 DSP. Obviously, no.
Yeah, actually, the SPL Phonitor X has that, I think.
Oh yeah, that's built into the amp. I forgot about that. Yeah, here you go. Yeah.
But no, I don't use it. I don't like that. I tried messing around with it, but I don't like it. I don't like doing that stuff. So I want it to be headphone experience.
Yeah, I think Soundstage is, although I don't think it'll ever really match an actual speaker in a room, I think it's important to note that how much it actually matters to you definitely is going to vary from person to person. That's why I think, like, my complaints about the ALS not having a very good Soundstage and resolution not being quite amazing might not matter at all, because it's just one of the, like, most buttery smooth headphones I've heard, and the frequency response and the timbre is just, it's really great, even though there's a lot of other things that are lacking on it. It's why preference definitely plays a factor here, so I have to be careful. But yeah, anyway.
Let's see. Here's one for you that you would be able to answer that I can't. The HD800 imaging and clarity better than the LCD2F? Or is the question.
I don't know if the imaging on even the LCD2 is particularly realistic. I think, if I remember right, like the way that it kind of spreads the images a little bit out to the sides, and the center image is not as realistic. And I think the HD800 kind of does that too. I don't know. Max probably has something to say about that question, but I don't know. A Soundstage, to me, I hate reviewing it because it takes so much time to go back and forth, because it's a lot more subtle than some of the other things. Like, I can immediately tell if some headphone is bright or dark, or something doesn't sound right, because I've heard the same tracks, just like a lot of the reviewers have their own playlists like a million times, so I know what they're supposed to sound like. But when it comes to Soundstage, like, it's a little bit, it's tough. So off the top of my head, I don't know if I can answer that one.
You also have to almost, at least for me, when I'm trying to evaluate Soundstage, I find I have to listen in a different way.
Oh yeah.
Like, I have to, like, focus on a completely different thing than what I would normally be focusing on for evaluating Soundstage, and get into that kind of first you have to have like the right tracks for this as well. So you know, using Yoshi Horikawa and all this stuff, but you know, listening in a way that isn't specifically keying in on detail and frequency response and all the rest of the elements, but rather where things might be positioned in physical space. If you were to like close your eyes and actually picture where this stuff might be, it's just a different mode almost of listening. But I will say that for me, soundstage depth is almost more important, because like, again, it's the difference between the Ananda and the Aria. The soundstage placement is pretty similar, but the depth for the Aria is so much more that it just adds so much more character, and like what makes it so much more interesting. Let's see. What's the next one? Oh yeah, we gotta. M. Sherm is gonna die if we don't tell him if we have impressions of the.
I think we talked about
Borealis. That. Yeah, we did. Yeah,
in the Flux stream, because he actually has one. So if you want to watch more content on that after this, you can definitely check that out.
Yeah.
But again, I haven't heard the production model, so I don't know 100%. But it's definitely.
I haven't either. Yeah.
But as far as I know, it's, and I think Max reviewed it as well. I believe that there's been an update recently where the headband is breaking on those things. So if it happens for you, they're going to send you a new one. But in the meantime, I'm not sure if they're still building them. I think they're going to try to revise it. So that happened.
There's a new seatbelt?
No.
Or it's the seatbelt that's breaking?
No, it's the nitinol or
the nitinol.
Whatever. Yeah. I don't even know if they're using nitinol. It looks like it, but something about that is breaking on the headband. Not the suspension strap. I can't imagine if the seatbelts were breaking. What are people doing to that thing? But sound wise, when I heard it a while ago, I think my impression was basically, there's a little bit of a 6 or a 7K peak, but like I don't think I change anything else about the frequency response of it, and it slams like crazy. That's what I thought. I didn't think the resolution was up to 899, but something must have changed, because Max thinks it's like a $2,000 detail-wise headphone, but I haven't heard what it sounds like now, so I don't know.
I mean, speaking of which, I mean, I have a headphone that costs $2,000 right here, and we'll see if it compares to this for detail.
There we go.
I think this should be around like 1,500 to 1,700 and compete with its competition. But I'll leave that for my review, which will come out probably tomorrow or Monday or something. But for me, Borealis, at least when I heard it at the meet, which is again meet conditions and not the best environment, which apparently it was nothing about the sound should have changed. That's what I was told. It sounded like something that was a little bit more appropriate for the kind of music that I like. So. Imagining like closer in tonality to something like a Utopia. That was kind of my take at the time. Even potentially something similar to this, or maybe HD800S without the peaks. But maybe it does still have the peaks, like Metal was saying. I didn't spend enough time with it.
Hard to tell.
But I really liked it. For when I heard it, immediately I went, wow, this is something worth taking seriously. This is really good. So if that reaction continues when I get a chance to actually sit down and review it, then I think it probably is worth its price tag. I think if not, maybe potentially a new benchmark for that. What is it, $900?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, all it has to do is even match the Auteur, and it's
exactly. Yeah. If you can
quite a deal.
If we get a $900 Auteur, that is.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah. Of course, it wouldn't have the wood, but
right.
Would you rather have a seatbelt or wood?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I don't know how long the warranty that they're offering on that is, but I do know that they are fixing that band, as Max said. And the rods are breaking apparently. Yeah, that's what's happening. So they're going to revise it.
My question would be about the difference as far as the driver's capability between that and the biodynamic of the Auteur. Like where does that fall? That's always like my question for that stuff.
I'm not sure. Someone is saying that they should add grills. Well, I think the whole point of the headphone is to damp the headphone as little as possible, so that it has as little as possible in the way of your ear, between the driver and your ear. So that's kind of just the way they are. Yeah, like Max just said there, it's messed with the sound just by adding grills, so they didn't. It's really maxed out in an unusual way for what the driver is.
But see, that's another like important thing I think for when we think about closed back headphones and like where the limitation is, it's like not only are you closing off the back, you're also adding a ton of damping in there to get the frequency response right and to stop all the, you know, waves bouncing backwards. It's like it should, you know, stand to reason that, you know, the threshold for whether or not they are any good is way lower. Unless you have like crazy, you know, like the Icon and the Atticus, you know, they're a little bit larger, right? So that might help with that a bit.
Yeah, they have a chamber, and I think that Zach was saying with the Verite closed, he's got the largest volume inside there that they could possibly be resonating with or having a large soundstage with, despite being technically closed. It's like they're giving them some room space, kind of.
And apparently, it's also the most closed. Like it's the most closed.
Yeah, he doesn't have it vented very much, if at all. Yeah. I'm not sure. He might have added some vents to it. I only saw it in person like once or twice. So I don't remember, but yeah, it doesn't have. It's not vented like the Atticus and Icon are. Those two are pretty closed, but they're mostly closed. They're not actually full closed.
My understanding with the venting on those ones, or at least on the Icon, was that a lot of that was done for uniformity, so you could make sure that all the cups would like. The reason why there were all the holes there, maybe not, you know.
Yeah, he doesn't open them. He doesn't open them all. Yeah, I think he tuned them individually because the cups were not, you know, perfect from one unit to the next because it's you know, handmade. So, yeah, that's what I remember hearing too.
Let's see. Where can I buy the cheapest 3.5 millimeter cable for the Focal Legia? I don't know about the cheapest, but probably go with Periapt. Like if they're still sending cables out, I don't know. Like, I would just go with some of the, you know, basic kind of, you know, I think they cost like $80, $100. Cables are ridiculously expensive because, especially the custom ones, because, you know, there's no like standard process for making them. Somebody actually has to make them.
Yeah, so when you're unless you're buying like a mass-produced aftermarket cable on Amazon, which there are a lot of, that you'd have to take into account the labor plus, you know, the premium connectors people are using. I know that Periapt uses amphenols. Yeah, okay. Right. There's Idolics and Neutrik gets used a lot as well. Those have quite a premium on them if you look at, I mean, unless you order them in massive quantities, which somehow I doubt is really possible for some of these smaller guys. I don't know how large their order size is, but those parts cost, like, if you were to buy a Neutrik on its own, one of them, it's like a couple of dollars. And that's just the connector. So now you got to buy another connector.
Idolics are, I think, even more expensive.
Idolics, yeah. So it's that has to have something. I'm just thinking of, like, you know, profit margin on cables is probably not massive, if I had to guess, for some of these smaller guys. And as far as I know, Periapt is one of the cheapest for, you know, actually handmade and tested cables. They actually write down the song they tested with. It's hilarious on the certification. The song they tested with and the amp they tested with and the headphones they tested with for every single cable. So, like, which is impressive given that price. But anyway, yeah, I haven't tried Hart cables, but they have an interesting. Yeah, Max says Neutrik XLRs $4 a pop. $4, just a connector, one connector, and Idolics are $20. Oh my god! Yeah, so you can see that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's definitely part of it. But yeah, I agree.
Somebody asked earlier, what's your favorite AudioQuest cable?
Is that what somebody asked?
Somebody asked. I couldn't answer because I haven't actually, you know,
I was wondering, I haven't gotten into that stuff. That makes sense. Yeah, no, I have no idea. But apparently, well, they're what was it called? They had a ground loop isolator, a fixer or something that looks like total snake oil. But at least when Max tried it, it fixed it actually did do something and fixed the ground loop. It didn't make anything sound godly, but it fixed the ground loop or something. It was meant to fix. Yeah, so it's not, I don't know how to feel about AudioQuest. They're like the most memed company, I swear. I hate using that word as a verb, but anyway.
I've definitely had situations where, like...
Oh my god, super review. Very funny. Did you see what he just said?
No, I didn't. I think there's a delay for the chat for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it says, Metal, can you move out of frame so I can screenshot your room and use it as a Zoom background? Who would ever want to use this crappy room as a Zoom background? That's
Oh my
hilarious. I like that one. That was good.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, Audio Quest stuff. Oh my god, it's funny because, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was iFi, not EQ. My bad. But
Oh, okay.
they both make stuff like that. Um, yeah, I was talking with Sean Olive about how people absolutely hate my Nighthawk reviews so much, and because they probably own it and think it's fine and whatever, which is fine. I never said you're not allowed to own it. And I think I talked about that earlier, but yeah, they get really mad at it. And Sean Olive, he went in and he was like, "Oh yeah, that thing scored really badly in even our
Second worst or
tests."
something, was it?
Yeah, but I think that was the Night Owl. It wasn't even the
Yeah.
Nighthawk. It's like the Night Owl was. And I think the Night Owl has a much more normal frequency response. I've only
Well,
heard
there's
it
also
once or
two
twice,
different sets of
but
pads for the Night Owl.
oh,
Well,
okay,
there's
I
three
see.
potential pads, so it would, depending
Yeah,
on which pads you ended up getting, I think would.
and it still scored poorly, so I don't
Yeah.
know what that's all about. The LCD2 scored very well, which is bizarre. And I asked Sean, like, that frequency response is not that good. Why did it
But
score well?
it's also a high-end planar with good technicalities. Like I think that's.
Yeah, but we can't
I
say
know.
that.
But like the question of whether or not they preferred it, I don't think can be uniquely attributed to its tonality.
Yeah,
If
no,
there are other
no.
qualities.
Actually, he did attribute it to tonality, but in a
No, I know
different
he
way.
did. I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
that,
which is interesting because
Yeah.
I think he said that even though there's no bass shelf, it's just because the mids are so recessed and relaxed that it kind of already has a tilt in the Harman way as it is, which is why he thinks people liked it. So I don't know. Anyway, what were we even talking about? Oh, cables. Yeah, I haven't
yeah.
tried the hard cables though, still, so I don't know.
I want to get into. I wanted to actually make cables myself, and then it turned out that it's just really difficult to get all the parts here, like to bake them at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Pretty much, Max said
Yeah,
in the chat,
that's
and
what
it
Max is
said
telling me as well.
multiple times, like,
Yeah.
if you're thinking about starting a cable company, just don't. It's
Well, I just
not
wanted
a
to make
good
them for
idea.
myself because like.
Oh,
it's,
that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like
Yeah.
some people on the community forum. Like there's I
It
know
won't, it
Ian
won't be
made a
as
ton of
cheap as you
cables.
think too. Like I
No,
was saying,
it's
I'm
not.
pretty sure the profit margin on those, like especially for sorry guys, for Periapt is
Yeah.
it's not good.
That's it. The Night Owl sounds more normal. Jesus Christ, I never want to hear the Nighthawk.
Yeah, I think somebody owns the Night Owl here, and I'm saying it sounds more normal. I mean, you can even look at the tile graphs; they look more normal. And
Yeah,
he has
it's-
them comparing.
It's me.
And
Actually. It's
oh man, the Nighthawk is just.
the Night Owl right here.
Oh, you actually
This
have
was
one. Oh,
yeah,
no
yeah, I
way.
have one. Yeah, this I'm using. This has the suede pads. I use this actually as an amp tester more than anything else because it is ridiculously revealing of amps.
That's
But with the suede pads, it
really
sounds
unique.
also even more normal.
okay.
Yeah, but I think as Andrew from headphones.com mentioned in his video that he did a long time ago, he said this is the cilantro of headphones. I think that's appropriate.
That might be the best description ever for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I eventually have to try that. I don't know, but they're not even. I don't think they're made anymore. They totally
No,
discontinued their
I
headphones.
think they've
yeah.
discontinued. Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know.
But the funny thing is, if you compare both, so not this with the suede pads, but the original tuning of the Nighthawk and probably even the Night Owl to a certain degree, to what's the name of it? Westone IEMs. There's a similarity there because they're designed.
really?
They're both designed by Skylar Gray, and I think he had that same approach to.
Oh wow! I didn't know
yeah.
he was with Westone as well. That's
Yeah,
really
he was one of the
weird.
Westone engineers. And like if you listen to Westone IEM, it's like it's like bass shelf with tons of mids that overshadow everything else.
800 hertz bass.
Yeah.
shelf, yeah.
Yeah. That's what the Westone IEMs. Well, I don't know about all of them, but the ones that I heard at least
That's
sounded like.
That's really funny because now that
Yeah.
you mention that makes a lot of sense. I've heard quite a few IEMs that have way too far, IEM frequency response. Oh my god! I thought full size headphones had some bad FRs sometimes, but
yeah, when
man,
you get
some of the
into
cheaper
IEMs, it's-
IEM frequency responses can be really whacked out. And
Although this
Yeah.
guy right here, this is the Starfield from Moondrop.
I want that so badly. I think Max is actually gonna just give
It's-
me his after he's
It's
done.
so good for $100 or however much it costs.
Yeah, I think he might be the best $100 IEM you can buy. I think.
If you compare this to I'd love to hear your thoughts on this versus the the Tin Audio T, whatever the one
T4. I have the T2 and the T4, and then I'm gonna get the Starfield, I think, from Max. That's gonna be a great review, or maybe stream. I don't think I'm gonna do reviews anymore. It takes too much effort.
Yeah.
But that would be, I actually already have some thoughts on IEMs. I think I talked about last time. Did I say thoughts? Oh, am I from
Well,
New
you're
York or
from
something?
New Jersey.
Yeah, North Jersey. I used to have a slightly stronger New York accent, right? Not anymore. But anyway, now I just say hoogie. Don't get me started on South Jersey and Philly. But anyway, no, actually, I recently got the Etymotics ER4 XRs in, and that one, this is not really answering any questions in the chat, but while we're on the topic of IEMs, I think that kind of solved the frequency response already for IEMs for the most part. It just sounds scarily uncolored, which is really unusual for an IEM. However, my only problem with it is it just doesn't sound like it has a lot of resolution in the treble, in the mid treble or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's just too subdued, but I mean, it sounds fine. It's just the mid treble is just kind of recessed. But then again, I like the T2's treble, so with foams, so it's I don't know. I don't know what the variance is. Some people are speculating the variance between people and IEMs for frequency response. What's it called? Preference versus full size might be further from each other. It might be less. I don't actually know. I thought that by eliminating
we talked about that.
We definitely talked about that. I thought that eliminating the pinna from the equation would make it a little bit more even, but I don't know.
I think that the difference is because
then there's the canals are different too, though.
The canals, and then like the way that it interacts with the canal. Like I went back and forth with that one guy on Head 5 for way too long about the CL2, and because like I was like, how this costs $900, and it's like how can anybody think this is okay? And then that was before I realized just how all over the map IEM tunings can be.
Yeah,
especially for high end stuff. It's like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Oh, so somebody's asking me what tips. I'm using the treble flange because for me, the dual flange, they do add treble, but it sounds like crap. I don't know why, but it just creates glare at the mid treble peak that it's created. It doesn't sound as clean. So that's why I'm using the triple flange still. So my mini DSP ears feels lonely.
I think they're all sort of getting a little bit more lonely these days as people are realizing
I mean,
where the limitations
we tried to tell people very early on. I still see people being like, that ears graph doesn't look right. And I'm like, I know. It's the only reason why we use that thing is because it's something that we can use that's better than a flat plate. It's not really very accurate. It's another reason why it's kind of sitting up there. Yeah. Oh God. 4.5.
I've been messing around with using custom so changing the HPN and HEQ
okay.
Yeah, so you can well, in this case I've been messing with the HPN compensation because I think it's like a more accurate starting point in general. But what I found is so you can definitely when you're adjusting it, you have to do everything the opposite of what you think would make sense. so when you're adjusting the volume
right,
level,
that makes sense.
You always have to go the opposite. So at 4.5 kHz I took it down, the peak there, and what I found, well, it's not just 4.55, it's like everything with that. But what I found is that it changes depending on the shape of so if it's a planar that you're measuring on there, it's just like totally flat. It'll change where that 4.5 kHz artifact shows up, and then if you're using a something like the Focal headphone with the angled drivers, it shows up in a completely different spot. So you can't just remove the 4.5K artifact, because that'll then, on headphones that don't have the same angle to the driver, it won't show up in the same place for those headphones. So you'd almost have to have 2 different or 3 different compensations for headphones that have different positions to the where the driver sits. And then at that point it's well, how do you even know that that's correct, right? How do you know that the angle of the driver is appropriate for where you put the dip, right? So at no point are you going to get it to be perfect, I think. And you just have to, I think, just say, well, 4.5 kHz is pointless. We can't really.
So the problem with the ear is not just that it has weird resonances like that, but it also is different for every headphone than like a Gross would be for
Yeah.
those headphones. Like headphones with drivers further away are darker. Headphones with drivers closer are brighter. I think I've found
Yeah.
IEMs are totally wrong because the canal is
Completely.
just a cylinder, which
Yeah.
is nothing like a human.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And everything is also shifted down, or sorry, shifted.
right.
It's
Actually,
shifted.
what I find
What?
is the peaks are shifted depending on how far out you go. I think it's like
Yeah.
if you're so I think that the system is sort of accurate up to about 1 or 2K, and then after that it's everything, all the peaks actually start being shifted by about 1K starting at around
Yeah.
2 or 3K, and then all the peaks further up are about 2K shifted from where they should be. Like I think
Yeah.
you see, what is it, like I think it's 8K peaks all the time, and those are all 10K and stuff like that. Yeah, it's way off, and someone just said try the compensation from SBAF. Well, see, the whole thing is you can't compensate it because it changes from headphone to headphone what the compensation is supposed to be.
Yeah. So
That's
that's
the
what I was
problem with
talking
the
about. Yeah.
system.
With
Yeah,
even if you use I originally did try to. That's where I got the idea from, to try and change the compensation, was just to
Yeah.
try and use the SBAF one. But the problem, you still run into that same problem where it's going to vary depending on the headphone itself, depending on physical characteristics of the headphone and
yeah.
how the driver interacts.
I think
with the headphone.
Mad Economist wrote up some really great stuff. He's the guy who runs what's it called, Cascadia Audio, but he's got some actual head and torso simulators. And he ran a whole bunch of tests, and he showed how there's not an HRTF, but he invented a new term. I think it's called like headphone related transfer function.
Yeah.
Because each headphone had a different variance from how it would measure on a Gross, and that's the problem. So, and I think he actually put that on the headphone forum. So if somebody reminds me later, I'll have to link that because it's a really good read. This guy knows everything there is to know about measurements. It's shocking. He's read like all the papers and stuff.
He's
so.
been super.
Him and
informative
Oratory
helpful. Yeah.
are like the people I go to for the audio science because they've actually read everything. And so you shouldn't go to me, you should go to them. Someone is okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to address this. Someone's like, did I wrong no theme reviews or something? No. I've never actually talked to the guy. I don't know where all that stuff came from, but of course I've seen the videos, but I've never actually talked to the guy.
You've you given a critical review for something that he liked. Maybe he liked the Amaron or something.
I guess. No, I think he had a bad experience with Audeze, I believe. What happened? I think he tried to buy. I don't know. I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen that many of his videos, just parts of them. But I think he tried to buy vegan suede pads or something like that. Back when Audeze was still making those for an M1060, and they asked for the serial number of the Audeze, and he was like, "You shouldn't need that." And that's a valid concern, but yeah, no, I actually have joked about, why don't we get him on here? Like I was battle something out.
I'd be game.
My God.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Honestly, if he just wants to throw questions at me about all this stuff, then yeah, we'll explain either of our sides. I'm okay with that actually, because I
We could
I
get
wish.
Sankar on here and quash all the beef.
Oh my God! And also get Shankar on here too. We already have that kind of planned. We do want to get somebody actually did ask that question earlier as well. I saw that, can we get Shankar or some of the other CEOs on here?
Yeah,
I believe that's
me,
that's part of Resolve's goals actually. Is to do that.
So
and of
if
course,
we do this,
yeah,
it wouldn't be like soon. It would be in the next,
Right.
Like
a couple weeks.
couple weeks. Yeah.
So, anyway, yeah, I have nothing to do with no theme reviews in terms of he's never really talked to me about any of this stuff. I don't know what the point was.
At the very least, it should be a little bit flattering, though. That I mean,
I know it's funny. Like somebody asked me about it on Twitter, and they were like, "Hey, this guy doesn't like you," and I'm like, "Well." I mean, I could respond, but what am I going to say that's going to change someone's mind who's had such a negative experience with a brand? It doesn't matter what the brand is. Like, I can understand that. Like, if you've had really negative experiences with the CS, then that's customer support, not Counter-Strike, you guys. And then yeah.
I had a negative experience. That's
everyone's had a negative experience with Counter-Strike. That's a little different. Anyway, okay. So hopefully that answers some questions about the guy.
Yeah.
I don't really care what he does. He can do whatever he wants, but because it's YouTube, it's the world. But yeah, I don't know where it came from.
All right, here we go. Resolve. Do you think that a Doug DeMuro style multi-dimensional score system would work for headphone reviews? I don't even know what that is.
Some people may not know this, but I am a massive car nerd, so that's why I'm laughing so hard at that. That's awesome.
Oh, is it a like a review channel? For
Yeah,
cars?
yeah, he's like
Okay.
the car reviewer pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah, and he does like he calls it the Doug score.
I'll have to look into this.
At the end.
Multi-dimensional score. I mean,
Oh yeah. He shows some spreadsheets at the end, so that'll help you understand what I think he's talking
yeah.
about.
So I actually have a scoring
It's
system
interesting.
that I use on my written reviews, and so I do. I don't know about multi-dimensional, but I generally weight things like I'll do like a score out of 10 for build design and comfort, a score out of 10 for detail retrieval, speed and dynamics, stage and imaging, timbre, and a score out of 10 for frequency response and tonality. So I do, and then I do end up. I don't have them weighted differently. Although I'm looking into that, like I'm considering it whether or not, I should weight that. Like maybe I should weight timbre less than or maybe I should weight soundstage lower than
Maybe you
frequency
should weight
response and
both
tonality.
of those lower. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of subjective though. Yeah, so
exactly
you
right.
have to kind of
So
make a video explaining that.
exactly,
Probably,
yeah.
yep.
But I am going to be introducing those into my video reviews as well, and so we're going to do. We'll have a scoring system. The challenge with that as well though is like where do you start? Do you start as like is appropriate for its price 5 out of 10? I don't know, or is that 9 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Like
No,
where
I
is
think the way Doug does it, I think he has he's got different categories and he's got them kind of subdivided. He's got like weekend score enjoyment of the car, and then he's got like daily score, like a Camry we
I like
get
that.
100 versus a Ferrari we get 100 on the other side, that sort of thing.
All right, I'll have to give it a watch.
It's
Maybe
actually
yeah.
kind of well thought out, and what he does is he gives all categories within those two sides score out of 10, I think it is, and he adds them up, and then they come up with an ultimate score out of 100, something like that. I think is what he's doing, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, as much as funny as that was of a question, that's probably worth looking at.
The last thing I want is to be doing scores in ways where the scores themselves don't matter, where the numbers, like there are places, I won't name them, but there are review sites where it's like they have scores and it's like, what's the point of this? There's no, like, everything gets like 9.5 out of 10. I don't, like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with that information? But actually, okay, so that leads me into, I have a question for you specifically, but before getting into it, I just wanted to see or get your take on Dried Plum's question here. What is headphone speed?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't really like that term.
I don't either, because speed could be detail. Like we could be, relating
Right.
this to detail in a way, but
So what I think I used to use it for was resonances. Like, oh man, probably the most obvious one is the K271 has a really weird, not the 371, the 271 has a really weird cuppy sound to it. And when you take out the driver, you actually notice it's just plastic behind it. There's nothing else. So I used to think it was I called that very slow in the mids because that's what would happen. It would vibrate the cup and the cup would resonate. But now speed seems kind of like decay, I guess, to me. Like a really slow headphone, I think in the treble, in my opinion, would probably be like something that has a lot of glare, meaning like you can EQ it down, but it still tries to, keep coming for you whenever that area is excited. The Alex has a little bit of glare there, I think, in the mid treble, not just a peak. So it's a little bit slower, I think, than the clear up at the treble. I guess that's, but it's like you have to define it differently per frequency response category almost. It's
comparing
weird.
dynamic drivers to planars, I always find planars sound like they're faster, like they're tighter.
Yeah.
Like everything sounds tighter on a planar. Now that's what I always associated with speed, like initial leading edge and then also decay. But then some of that gets into this weird time domain stuff where it's like, is that even something that we're measuring independently of frequency response? And I'm starting to think that a lot of this is
Could be
impacted so significantly by tonality. Even if it is some new information, it's like, again, the HD820, there is a good example of this, because wait, is
Yeah.
that it? Yeah, it is. Where the driver itself is probably fairly fast. It's especially if you listen to the HD 800S, but then you hear it implemented in that headphone, and it doesn't sound anywhere near as that same tightness, right? That same kind of snappy quality that you might have associated with a planar or something else. And the reason for that is because of the crazy bass shelf that intrudes up past 200 hertz. So,
Yeah.
it's like, none of it sounds particularly tight, but that's so much more related to its tonality than what the driver is actually physically doing. So in any case, yeah, I'm also like at a bit of a loss. That's why I wanted to get your take, because I used to have that sense of like speed is the control, and that, what distinguishes a planar in certain ways. And now it's like, I don't really know how I would define that.
I don't know. Details made up anyway, so.
Yeah, exactly.
I really don't like the question about timbre. Like, it's kind of funny. But I don't know. Maybe it's just because electronic music, especially, which is what I listen to a lot of, there's no realistic nature of how an instrument sounds and that, so it doesn't really matter there. So I think it depends.
No EDM in the wild.
I guess. Yeah, no. But it is fascinating to hear. The reason why electronic music is so interesting for me, especially reviewing, is because you're giving the headphone driver an artificial signal, and that artificial signal could be potentially very unrealistic and ideal. And so listening to how a driver reacts to something like, a sawtooth wave or something is very interesting, because it's like you're combining a theoretical signal with how the real world, it's really just, you're measuring headphones by using electronic music, because like all of those instruments are all artificial, and it's very hard to reproduce them with a physical driver. I don't know. That's kind of why it's interesting to me. I don't know if I've said that before, but that makes it pretty interesting. Yeah.
To me, the timbre question is more obvious in like I can definitely hear in most cases a planar as distinct from a dynamic. Like in blind listening, blind testing, I would be able to distinguish. Not also because they're ridiculously heavy in the case of some of the planars out there, but in general, right. I can probably tell the difference between a planar and a dynamic. I don't think that like there are other qualities that you might also be able to tell the difference, but I think there is a timbre difference there generally, especially some of the like if you compare it to like an icon or something like that, or an Aeolus. If you compare that to Hi-Fem and Aria, there is a timbre difference there that I think is tangible. But I almost notice it more in IEMs when comparing balanced armature IEMs to dynamic driver IEMs. Like to me, that, especially some of the bad ones, like the bad multi-BAs, like using the off-the-shelf Knowles BAs, there are some where it obscures detail, like it actually intrudes on the detail. Like I think the worst one that I've heard for timbre is probably the Campfire IO. I actually have one here somewhere. Oh, it's over there.
Not only does it have a really ridiculous peak, I haven't actually heard it, but looking at the graphs, I don't know if I want to.
It's like it also feels like I like the treble. I think the treble is fantastic for that one.
Oh, really? Okay.
The treble balance, like for the frequency there, I think is great, but there's like a chunk there missing between like 2 and 3K hertz, and that causes the really weird kind of bump before that and then after as well. It's like a perfect U that's like it's cut out of that headphone or that IEM, so it looks really weird in the frequency response.
Yeah, that's
odd. But to me, the bigger issue with that IEM is the timbre, is that it has that sort of metallic kind of smearing thing going on. And I find that is more obvious in IEMs than it is planar versus dynamic, versus E-stat. Maybe E-stats. I think you could probably pick an E-stat from a dynamic driver headphone, but potentially also from other reasons like detail and whatnot. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, some really good questions coming around here. I always forget that. The IEMs and BA and DD. That's a really good example. Definitely. I haven't gotten into IEMs. I'm just starting to really, for better or for worse. But that's probably the best example of timbre.
I remember somebody asked you that a long time ago, and you said, "Well, whenever I'm out on the go, I listen to music in my car."
Yeah, I mean,
So it's fair enough.
realistically, if I'm out somewhere, it's either to already be hanging out with friends where, I'm not going to listen to music, or if
Yeah.
I'm, running an errand, then I've got the Infinity with the high-end Bose system. Yeah, maximum bass. No,
You got to get
not
those
really.
Focal car audio.
Yeah, I don't think
Seriously,
they actually do.
they do. I didn't know that. I learned that when I was in New
Is it in
York.
French cars? I can't remember. The Citroen, I think they have
Was
one.
there?
I don't
Was it-
remember which brands, but yeah, they do have some car systems. I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah. Let's
Anyway,
see. I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think is this is related to what we are just talking about? Is there a certain category or categories that headphone reviewers value too highly? And are there categories that are valued not highly enough? What would you say those would be?
wow,
Categories as in stuff like Soundstage or whatever, right?
yeah, that's difficult. I mean, I think it totally depends on the reviewer, really. I know that if I use myself as an example, I definitely value resolution maybe more than I should, because and people were even saying this earlier in the chat. There's not that many people who actually EQ things a lot. So like something is really detailed, but it's really off. Is that really a good headphone or not? And that's more of a subjective question, but I think it depends on the reviewer completely. I think that everything's okay as long as the reviewer has a video, which I don't, explaining what they value and what they don't value and what their reference frequency response is. But if I had to take for an example of that, but in general, I don't know if I can generalize. Maybe you have a different answer, but I like that question though. That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
To me, it comes down to, I think, the question of whether or not somebody EQs, because from a reviewer perspective, if there's a headphone, again, maybe something like the HD820, which it does not have a very good tonality without EQ, like if you just listen to it out of the box, it has a really weird sound to it. I have to kind of recognize that 90% of the people who listen to that headphone, maybe even higher, aren't going to EQ it. Even though, maybe I find that I'm able to EQ it and actually get it to sound pretty good, 90% of the people out there who are watching the video aren't going to do that. So reviewing it based solely on whether or not it sounds good with EQ, I don't know if I could really do that. I think even like Max says he doesn't EQ
He doesn't.
stuff
Yeah, he doesn't EQ
generally.
at all. So I'm definitely the most guilty in that one, being like, yeah, this sounds good, but you have to EQ it. But that's
Yeah,
okay,
right.
'cause everybody
Yeah.
does that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not really.
But
true
that
either.
might be. I mean, I've been thinking about this in a way where I think it might be a loophole to try and, no, I don't know about a loophole, but find the value in something that would otherwise not be worthwhile.
Yeah, you listen to it and you're like, what is this crap? And then you put it back, but really possible for it to be decent. I think some people have that reaction to the LCD too. A lot of people do, actually.
I have that reaction to the HD800.
Oh my god!
I just think no, like.
Yeah, I know. As someone who's owned that for a long time now, yeah, no. If I turn off the EQ, I'm like, oh god, let me turn that completely off. I don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
I mean, here's a part of that question. Somebody asks, Metal, would you recommend the K712 without EQ? Right.
That one is. So again, it depends. The 712 is a really weird frequency response. I kind of like to refer to it as probably the best flavor headphone of the AKG open back line of that. It does have. I remember it having better detail than the 701 and the 702, but because the frequency response is so bizarre, I don't know. But it totally depends, because people listening to things like, I don't know why, but something about the way the mids are tuned on those open back AKGs sounds really good with piano and classical. I don't know why, but it doesn't sound realistic, but it sounds, I don't know how to describe it. That's just me. Maybe I'm going crazy, but without EQ, I think people could enjoy it, yes, but it's very important to note that those headphones really do have some fairly significant deviations, even from diffuse field, which I believe is what they were targeting in the first place. So,
Um,
I don't know if I've answered yes or no on that. It's kind of, it depends. It's tough.
Someone says I can't bring myself to EQ a $2,000 headphone. I've actually had a lot of comments like that as well on videos where I do post EQ profiles, and I think like to myself, I think, well, why not? Like I get not EQing it. I think there are very good reasons not to EQ something, and also to prefer something that you don't have to EQ. Right, those are two different things. But if you own a $2,000 headphone and you realize maybe I can get this to sound a bit better by doing EQ, I would say, why wouldn't you? You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think this probably goes back on what I've done before with the HD800. Hey, you can fix it, but I don't like fixing headphones really so much as, you know, maybe there's a couple little things that are off, and they bug me enough that I wouldn't want to listen to it without the EQ. I could probably tolerate it maybe, but why not? I mean, if you're just improving it. But yeah, then if you go too far with 5 or like 10 dB cuts or boosts, then it's like, maybe there really is something that's better. But I think one of the problems, one of the problems for me is it's funny because Max and I are both frequency response snobs, definitely. But I'm a different kind of snob in that, like, I'll EQ everything to fix it as much as possible, no matter how much it costs or whatever. And before, I kept hearing lots of headphones, and I'm like, I don't like this because there's this here and whatever, and then this here, and I felt like I was just throwing away a bunch of headphones that had other qualities that were really good, and I was just dismissing them completely. So that's one of the reasons why I started doing it. I've always been EQing things since I was a kid. Like, man, what was that program called? Cool Edit Pro or something stupid I actually had a long time ago. Just played around with that constantly. And I was always a gamer, so I had, you know, lots of sound cards that had EQs, and I would apply them on every headphone and everything. It's just, so then I stopped because I was like, okay, there's got to be a headphone that just sounds good. No, that didn't even work. That didn't even work for me. So but yeah.
So, someone says I didn't EQ until I got the DT 1990. I think that's that says it all, right? It's like, that's perfect. Like, that's a good headphone with EQ, right? Like,
it's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's subjective, I think, still. Yeah.
All right. So what's next here? I'll let you pick the next one. I got to back up because I'm sure I missed a bunch.
Somebody still said it's different than having it to EQ it to fix it. Well, that's another problem. I'm way too picky. Every single headphone I have, I can always improve somewhere with EQ. No ZMF headphone needs an EQ in the way the 820. That is a good point. I don't think it needs it to that degree either. That is a good point.
The other side of it, though, is that with especially the higher end ZMF headphones, nobody's measured it on a industry standard rig, so we don't actually know. You know, like, we could hear certain issues and be like, okay, I maybe want a little bit more here, maybe want a little bit less there. But we don't actually know 100%.
I think Zach actually posted some measurements.
Oh, did he?
From,
that would be.
I think it's marked audio precision or something.
I need to look into that because
I forget exactly where. I think they're on the ZMF site somewhere, and they came out with the Verite closed because he wanted to compare it to the open. So those are pretty interesting. But yeah, it's still hard to find ZMF graphs, though. In general, they're tough to find.
Yeah. So, like, I almost feel like while it might not require the same amount of EQ as like an HD800. In fact, it probably doesn't require even close to that. I certainly wouldn't. I also, like, I don't really know where to. Like I said before, like with my Verite, I've owned it now for almost like a year. I can't remember when I bought it, but I've owned it for a long time, and my EQ profile always changes for it because I don't have the reference point. Although maybe now I will. But in general, I do EQ like 3 to 5 kHz up.
So you do generally EQ the Verite when you're listening to it. Okay.
Yeah, I have it. But a lot of that is just by ear, right? Because I can't trust my measurement rig on that. Like, I boost 3 to 5 kHz by a bit. It's one of the most fascinating tonalities with the way that it has the cut, because the cut, it's short, but it's also extreme. It's not a gradual, like, kind of, curve there. It's more like, okay, this specific thing is removed, and it reminds me a little bit of like what happens with a comb filter. But then when you're trying to EQ, you can't use those super narrow peaks to bring it back, because then you introduce a whole bunch more issues that, like, you hear splash and shimmer for cymbals that you just didn't want.
Right.
So, and then I think there's also, I actually add a little bit of air for it as well above 10K.
It seems, I was going to say that the way I perceive that headphone, which is, given my preferences, makes sense. I don't know, whenever I'm using it with the stock lambskin Verite pads, it just sounds like it's got a 5K peak, and the air is kind of dead sounding for something like that. Now, I don't think the reason why, and that was a pretty negative first impression, but I think that from what you're saying there, it's probably got all the resolution. It's just, probably all hiding because of the weird frequency response and some of the trouble there. So
that's my hope with the Verite suede pads.
Yeah. Oh, did you buy those because I said they were pretty good? Because they definitely.
Well, you were talking about the Verite closed, and then I know Android.
No, I was also talking about.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Actually, one of the guys on Headphone, I went to a local Bloom meet. The pads he used was suede Verite pads as well, perf suede Verite pads, and I tried those and I was like, whoa, this is way better whenever you use the lambskin pads. But supposedly Zach told him that it rolls off the bass too much or something. I don't know. I wasn't hearing that. But yeah, so I agree anyway.
With the Verite, oh man, there's too many pads. With the regular Verite perforated pads, what I like about them is that a lot more of the technicalities come through. Like when I was comparing actually the Verite with the Utopia, I felt it was closer when I was using the regular Verite pads as far as like detail and all that stuff. So he did actually send me like a while ago these suede Universe pads, which the tonality overall with the suede Universe pads was I found quite a bit more, at least for my preference, quite a bit more agreeable in the treble. But then at the same time, it lost a little bit of the technicality, comparing it with the Utopia compared to the regular Verite pads. And I think that the reason for that, wait, this is the wrong pad. What am I doing? These are the right pads. Different suede pads. I think that the reason for that is because of the distance, the physical distance that the Universe pad imparts, because it's thicker, right? And you get the same, at least for me, I got the same experience when using the Universe solid pads, or the leather lambskin Universe pads as well, where it increased the soundstage, but I felt like it lost just a tiny little bit of detail, or of
that's generally been my experience with the closed backs, at least. Definitely, like some reason, even on the Atticus, every time I would go back to anything using lamb, it was just created a bunch of glare and peaks and just didn't sound that great. I think the suede might have been slightly brighter. I mean, all the headphones react slightly differently, but I think that suede's sound a little bit, actually maybe quite a bit more resolution-wise, better resolution-wise. But it depends on if you like their frequency response change. So it's like, it's hard. And apparently there's another pad now. What is it? The hybrids, right? I think you mentioned that.
There's there's so many new pads.
Hybrid
Verites,
B2, yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. There's the hybrid ones where it's like lambskin, and then there's this kind of material on the top.
Yeah.
That also looks interesting, but I'm hopeful to do like a full pad comparison Verite video in the near future.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I can't trust my rigs, the measurements on my rig with that stuff. Like,
right.
And Android did post like all of the pad measurements on the headphone forum, and so if you guys want to see what all the different measurements are, how they compare to one another, at least you can see how they compare to one another on that rig. But I don't think that that's an accurate representation of the way that it would sound. Just because it's not a very it's the rig's fault, not anything else.
Yeah, so we're not using ears to misrepresent graphs on purpose. We just don't have a Gross 5128 because it's kind of expensive,
45 grand.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So.
Well, actually, I just was talking to Matt Economist recently about that kind of stuff, and I that is its own rabbit hole to go down, man. Like that's figuring out, like, there's people who are really into the measurement stuff, and even just some of the people I was talking to earlier, it's like there's people who are, I didn't even realize this, but there's people who are using it just for regular recording testing purposes to, just record noise for no, like, there's nothing that they're doing with it. It's just they want to know what it's like, what it measures like. And it's like, okay, that's
I know that Ratings actually. So Ratings is using essentially Tiles, not Tiles actual hats, but the same model.
43 AG, isn't it?
43. Is that what it is? Okay.
So this is
maybe you know better than me because you were just talking to Matt about that.
Well, I don't actually know that. I don't know what they're using right now, but just from seeing that recent tweet from Sean Olive, it sounds like the variance that you would get from what would ideally be a more precise system above 8K hertz. It sounds like any variance in positioning would have a greater effect on those frequencies than whether or not it's more precise or less precise. So in some ways, getting the thing that is more accurate above 8K hertz doesn't matter as much, because we're always if we're measuring different headphones, we're always going to be positioning them slightly different anyways. So it's something where I feel like there's no real conclusion or consensus yet as to what the best system is, other than, of course, the 5128, which is
the newest. Let's just throw away the standards and start over kind of system. Jude made a good. It wasn't Jude's video. It was B&K made a video, right, with Jude explaining that, and he was talking to me about that at Can Jam too. It's fascinating what they did. The level to which they went to try to emulate the ear even further was pretty crazy. But generally, the funny thing is that, if you think the ears is bad, it is, there is no one hat that has zero headphone-related transfer function, it would seem. Like one headphone to the next still may or may not match your preference. And actually, that's a big reason why, and I was going to mention this in the EQ section earlier, I am such a proponent of using your music to generate essentially your EQ profile. You can use a graph as a guide, sort of like a rough guide of how much to boost where and how to cut, but there's so much understanding that most people don't have, not even me 100%, because I can't know what every rig measures like with which headphone. There's still variation there where the peaks may show up in the graph and you may not hear them that way. So it's much better to use the combination of, sweeping a sine wave, like a sine wave generator, and hearing where you hear the peaks and dips. Now, don't EQ it so that, that's another complicated part. Don't EQ it so that all your sine wave on your head sounds the same volume. That's apparently also wrong.
Yeah.
But if you hear relative peaks that show up very prominently, or relative dips that show up very obviously, those may be some areas to target in the EQ. But use your ears. Auditory likes to generate his profiles. I think contrary to popular belief, and I asked him about this, he doesn't just measure it and then create the EQ based on the measurement. Apparently he does listen, and that's why sometimes he goes through a couple of revisions. But anyway, you try to use not that many filters in general, and I use my music as a guide so that it just sounds good to me. It's not perfect at all. It's not as precise as Auditory and his EQs, but everyone has a slightly different preference. So that's my approach there.
I liked I'm sure you've read it, but I think it was Bob Katz's article about how, if you want to get like recognizing that everything is mastered slightly differently or has different microphones or whatever in the music that you have, find 10 recordings that are good, that are good, and then EQ using those 10 recordings. Or like, he was using it to determine whether or not a headphone is going to sound good for those 10 recordings, then it's probably going to be a decent headphone. But having that same set of recordings, and then, if you hear something there's a peak there in multiple different recordings, because like there's always a chance that the recording itself could just be the issue. Like I have some tracks where it's like the recording is like something might sound great on the Sundara, but then there are definitely recordings where it sounds not particularly good, but that's the fault of the recording, not the headphones. So
Yeah, or you just own headphones that make bad recordings sound good, and then ones that make good recordings sound really good.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, how a headphone collection should take shape, at least at the beginning,
Yeah.
too, because there's going to be a lot of. It's going to be. I mean, it's funny, even with the LCD2, surprisingly, there's some recordings that just sound so much worse, and I keep thinking, no, the headphone's still not, grain free enough to reveal that, and then I go to a good one, and I'm like, oh, never mind. Wait a minute. It's weird. So you got to have like a fun headphone at some point. I mean, if you want to, if you're not listening to perfect music all the time, like Resolve does. No, I'm just kidding.
But actually,
it's good to have different ones.
Headphones.
ZMF's a good one for that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. They tend to make bad recordings sound fine and good recordings sound even better. I think that's
pretty much.
They
definitely have sort of a magic there that.
Yeah.
It's timbre. Many headphones have. Yeah, it's probably part of it. Now, timbre does matter. Going off what I was saying earlier, I don't like to dabble as much in trying to describe that, but I think that it's a somewhat reasonable expectation that a piano should kind of sound like a piano, unless you're intentionally trying to color it, and that's a lot of it right there.
Oh man, piano recordings though, like
that's such a revealing thing to use. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then the recordings, oh my god.
I have some piano recordings where it's like super muffled and muted sounding piano, and it's like it doesn't matter. Like I have headphones that, like if I were to EQ based on that piano recording, it would boost 3 to 5 kHz way too much. It'd just be shrill. But I guess we can move on here.
Anyway,
here's a question for you. Of the ZMF closebacks, aside from the Verite closed, which do you prefer more without EQ? I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you answer.
Honestly, neither one of them. It's funny that my experience with the Atticus was pretty unique, because, and maybe it's not crazy, but when I reviewed it, it was the Cherry, and then when the one I ordered for myself was the Camphor, and for some reason the Camphor one definitely did not sound as good in resolution in the highs. It sounded more glary, and it might just be because the softer woods have a different decay characteristic as well. But the problem I had with the Cherry was that the bass did not have almost any impact. I don't know why. I don't know if it was that unit or what, but so both of them I wanted to EQ because generally the Atticus does have quite a large peak. I don't see people talk about this very much. It's quite a significant peak at like 11K. It's pretty piercing actually. The mids are really smooth, but the treble is just piercing, depending on what you're listening to. And then the Icon is very mid forward for me, and I was listening to the it's pronounced Padok. Somebody says Padau. There's too many. There's a lot of weird pronunciations for that wood. But the red one, like reddish one, and that's a very hard wood. And so that could have been also accentuating the issues I had with it, which was the upper mid sounded annoyingly harsh, and yet I think Flux had a Camphor Icon, which was not nearly as harsh because it's slightly softer wood. So like it's difficult. I don't think I would take either one with no EQ. I don't know if Zach would probably be mad about that, but sorry, that's
well, you could switch the pads, I'm sure, and find some way of tweaking it maybe. And
what I ended up doing was I ended up with the Ori Suedes with the Atticus, and that made the detail better, but I still needed to EQ the treble down a lot at like 11K or something like that. That's how I ran them a lot of the time. Now the Soundstage was incredibly awesome. Until obviously you encounter like things like the Stelia and Verite closed. But for a close back at that time that I'd heard, it was ridiculous, especially in like I think it was 2017 when I reviewed those.
But I mean, for the wood differences in general, the wood that's more dense would have it would change the damping factor, right? Like,
it seems like it's weird because like classically when Zach would send me review units. He would always use the hardest wood possible because he knows I like detail. And then for some reason, from what I experienced with the Icon and Atticus, it seems like the opposite is now what I'm preferring. I want the softer woods.
It's just getting older.
But the dynamics, yeah, exactly. But the dynamics of them is much worse on the softer woods. I have no idea. The answer is I need to go to like Illinois and listen to every wood, every pad, every model. It's very hard for him to give me all of that stuff. So
On Glen
anyway,
OTLs.
I'm not sure. Yeah, right. on every amp. Yeah, it's just so many combinations. It's
Yeah.
So but the short answer is, yeah, I don't think I would take an Icon or an Atticus without EQ. What I actually switched to using at the office was the Mobius. Hilariously enough, I was using the 371, which I'm wearing now.
This is another inspiration for another video from No Theme Reviews.
Yeah, here it comes. No, he already did one on the Mobius.
Oh, right.
That I saw. Yeah, and he's like, this is the best. And then you start the video, and it's like, it's the best at being the worst headphone. It was great. He actually clickbaited me on that one. That worked. That's pretty funny. But anyway, no, that's what I ended up using.
See, for me, the answer to that question would be the Icon with the.
Icon definitely seems like it would be the most accurate, maybe. Yeah. Atticus is kind of weird, yeah.
But not having spent anywhere near enough time to actually give a proper assessment of that, I only heard the Icon once, so it sounded fine to me. Let's see. We should probably do just like a few more here because it's coming up on like 2 hours almost. I'll let you pick the next.
It's not too bad. Let's see. Aeon Flow versus LCD GX. That's a weird question. You mean the Open versus the LCD GX? Yeah, I only heard the Aeon Flow 2 Open once, and it sounded like it had a lot of treble. I don't know why.
It does have a lot of treble. Well, the closed does as well.
The closed was not as much. Definitely not as much. For some reason, the Open sounded like it was throwing a ton of air at me for no reason as well, which is weird. I don't know.
Oh, sorry, you're talking Aeon 2?
Aeon 2 Open.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one's bizarre. So the GX, I think, I don't know about Soundstage and Dynamics. I haven't reviewed that. Generally speaking, the DCA stuff, as it's known now, is not very dynamic, but that doesn't seem to bother their users. The resolution-wise on the Aeon 2 closed is really, really good. The Elysia that I had, that Resolve and I will always battle over this probably at this point. The Elysia I had was just not that impressive for $899, but we've already had this discussion where closebacks are disappointing anyway, so
I want to have you here and I can just put this on with my EQ profile and then see how you...
I need to listen to your unit probably on your amp or whatever it is, because it's I don't know. Anyway, people have asked me this a bunch of times. LCD1 versus Sundara. Yeah, if you have an amp, which I think most people in the chat do, absolutely the Sundara. Sundara is actually not easy to drive. It's funny because it kind of pulls you in with the 32 ohms, but it's like I think 94 dB per milliwatt, which is very low.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. So you definitely need that. And then, but the flip side of that is LCD1 is very, very efficient, but the problem is it's such a low impedance that depending on what you plug it into, it could be a problem to drive it still, because the damping factor is going to reduce the volume a lot on it, because it's like 16 ohms, I think. They told me 13.5 when I reviewed it, and then they posted it as 16 ohms. I don't know which one it is, but there are lots of sources with like 10 ohm output impedance or higher, and that's going to be a problem for that. But generally speaking, yeah, if you have an amp, Sundara is better.
Max says Aeon 2 is the most detailed headphone DCA's ever made. I think so. I want to revisit the Ether 2 with the different pads, because I think I don't know
he's got multiple pads for that.
Yeah,
too.
He's got multiple pads for those, and he had those even before he did the Aeon 2.
Okay, right.
And now the other pads for the Aeon 2, because I think those other pads would be way more to my preference, right? For the upper mid-range kind of dip there that it has, and seeing the measurement there, obviously without hearing it I can't judge it, but it for the closeback, that would be, if it retains all the detail, right? That's the consideration. If it retains all the technical performance, that looks to be one of the more ideal closeback headphones out there. I think.
Yeah, I agree. Ooh. This is funny. LCD1 should work since I have a micro BL. No, I'm not sure that it's going to be able to drive it.
Yeah, that has like
That
what
thing has
4 watts,
incredible amount of power.
4 watts. I'm pretty sure it's
That's
yeah.
I think that's the only amp I ever actually reviewed, and Hi-Fi sent me a review unit, and then I sent it back to them as usual. But oh my god, that thing has incredible amount of power. It's so funny, and it's only
Yeah.
single-ended too, and it's just ridiculous. You can drive an LCD4 on that thing. It's
Yeah.
really ridiculous. Yeah. Just to answer this quickly, no, I don't have a repository for my EQ settings. You know what? I really should just make a GitHub and put all the configs up there. That way people could pull that. For the people who are not programmers, that's actual version control where, every time you commit a change, you can look at the differences between each commit you make. So I probably should put that up there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an idea. But anyway, yeah, I don't have a central repository. Oh, Max, you had the suede pads? Oh, no, are you talking about... Oh, Ether 2 pads. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, you should try the suede pads with the Aeon 2. That would be interesting.
Well, yeah, so apparently they're sold out right now with the
Yeah,
suede
it's not
pads.
surprising.
So, but I don't know if that means that they don't have any in-house or just none that they can sell. I don't know.
Or they're being
story
hyped
is.
up already just because of the graphs. And
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Well,
We'll have to see if that's actually good or not.
Right, like, but maybe using suede pads on those ones, maybe it causes other...
It does other problems. I know, that's the problem. It's like, we would like to... I'll be done with this hobby when somebody figures out how to tell me exactly how something sounds using just numbers.
Yeah.
Till then, it's fascinating. That's why.
I mean, at that point, we don't even need to listen to anything. We can just
You can just
we can enjoy looking at graphs.
One of my friends at work said, "Why don't you just wire something into your brain, and then you can skip all the physical reproduction of sound and just
yeah,
and just play it directly."
Yeah. Max says, still think AC2 has more detail than the E2. The only thing with the E2 though, I think, is that it has more stage, at least from memory. I'd have to compare them side by side, but I did feel that the stage was better on that one, whereas the Aeon 2, the stage on the Aeon 2 felt a little bit forced. Like it felt like it was that sort, the kind of like 3K hertz dip to kind of simulate sense of space. It felt like it had that going on, whereas the Ether 2 I felt was more naturally open sounding, but I guess it was a closed back versus an open back, so there's that element as well. Anything else jumping out at you?
Jeez, maybe I will do a GitHub then. That is kind of brilliant. People can see every time I update an EQ what changed, and because it's called diffing in that world. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there's enough programmers to understand.
But the other side of it too is like
EQ,
the other side of it is like unit variation and whatnot. That's like why I couldn't recommend EQ profiles for headphones that I know have unit variations. Like, it's not going to sound like that for
right. So I'd have to put like a README in each one, with notes about here's what I couldn't fix and here's what you should probably be careful with, and which I can do. But what's brilliant about putting it up on GitHub, I think, is that you can do this thing called a pull request when you're developing code that's open source. That's where it goes. It's GitHub. And what that means is people suggest, hey, we suggest that you do this change to your code, and you can decide whether to accept or reject it. In the case of EQs, people could be like, hey, try this. And I could actually go and give people feedback on what I liked or didn't like about their profile and their suggested change or something like that. So that's actually kind of crazy. Maybe I should do that. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe that'll happen. And so now it's Auditory's database versus mine. No.
We can. Well, if you put one of those together, I'll link to it in the
it's easy. I don't even think you need. Actually, I think you do need to get the download. No, I think you can just package it up and just click download, and I think it'll come down. That would be pretty interesting.
I've got an interesting one here. Have you compared the D8000 versus the Empyrean? Yes, I have. Not the D8000, but the D8000. Well, D8000.
D8000 Pro.
Yeah, D8000 Pro is the one to get. But it is the D8000 on its own is also interesting against the Empyrean because I think they would be closer. Whereas the D8000 Pro, that's got a more, let's say, normal tonality. That's probably the best tonality over all of them, all three of them. But also like the Empyrean, I feel, doesn't compete as far as technical performance with, like, not quite. It's probably not too far off in the treble, but I think in the bass the D8000 Pro is better. That's my take. But of course the Empyrean is way more comfortable.
It's more comfortable than most things.
Yeah, it's more comfortable than not wearing headphones.
Even Max like the D8000 Pro.
Yeah. Yep. Even Max.
It was still yeah, right. Oh no, I'm no longer able to get headphones from him. No. I feel like it was. Did I listen to that at Can Jam? I can't even remember. It definitely had a good amount of treble, I think, from what I remember. But that's about all.
Treble and speed.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But yeah,
it reminded me of like a LCD4 just with a more balanced tonality. But I think not like if I had to compare them side by side, I think the LCD4 might still win on detail. I'd have to have them in the same room.
You're supposed to say Sysvara always win.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I put Fang. Is it? I think it's Feng Bian is how you're supposed to pronounce it. I have no idea, but I put him right up there with Shankar. Those guys are doing some of the most innovative stuff with planars. Definitely, that's why those two companies are so interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't talked much with Fang myself. Mostly just Shankar, obviously, but yeah, good stuff.
Definitely. D8000 versus Stelia. Well, D8000
you can do that one.
D8000. Well, again, D8000 Pro versus Stelia. D8000 Pro is definitely more detailed, it's faster. Yeah, everything performance is better because it's an open back. It's not it's not really a fair comparison. And also, the D8000 Pro is like $2,000 more expensive than the Stelia, and it's a planar, so they sound very different from one another. The Stelia is like one of the best closebacks for sure, but like there's really not that much else out there to compete with. I mean, like the Verite closed and the Stelia are the only two really that I can't
wait for that comparison.
I'd love to do it. I
can't wait to do that myself.
Yeah,
it's be fun.
Yeah,
that's wild. Hi-Fi Mendiva. Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like stuff like the Mobius and the Hi-Fi Mendiva are just so out in left field from like what other people are thinking about right now. It seems like.
Yeah, we should
be in other brands. That's fascinating. I haven't done the Diva on Bluetooth. It wouldn't even connect to my phone on CanJam. It only connected to iPhone, so I ended up running it out of analog. I don't think it sounded the same as other people are saying.
Do you know if the version at CanJam was or does anybody know if the version at CanJam is the final version?
Yeah, I have no idea. But when I plugged it into my phone dongle, which is the only thing I had at the time, on analog, it sounded like it had like a 12 dB 11K peak that was just ridiculously huge. You know, I don't think Hyphaman would throw some tuning that far, that far off, except for the True Wireless. Have you heard their True Wireless?
No, I won't do it. I won't. I can't. I love Hi-Fi Man. I can't say anything bad.
That is just, oh my God. I'm so sorry, but that might be one of the worst things I think I've ever heard. It doesn't sound anything like, it's like, wait, what brand is this thing? I don't understand that product, but that was so funny. We're talking about the called the TWS 600. Yeah, we're not talking about the Diva. The Diva is not that bad.
Yeah, so hopefully there will be a Diva review soon that I'm able to do. We'll see
that'd be
if
great.
I can get one in house. I'd love to. Yeah. But what I heard at CanJam, it was definitely more of a consumer friendly tuning. So it had more bass.
And I think that's what Fang told you too, right? And
yeah, that's what he told me. I think that was kind of like the design goal was like to make something that was more entry level, but also fit better with the. I mean, he flat out like said to me, for lower price points, bass matters more. So.
It's not surprising. Oh no, I got to take this one. Is Mobius better than the HD100? Here's a chance for me to shill the best brand. No, that's a weird question. I mean, the HD800 has a lot of trouble, a lot more trouble than the Mobius, especially at 6K, and a huge soundstage. But the imaging is not super precise as it could be. Mobius is totally fake virtual soundstage essentially. And also completely threw me for a loop. It's weird that Mobius has virtual surround, because most games, as far as I'm aware now, have built-in HRTF simulations. Actually, it's just handled by the CPU. didn't used to be the case back in my old days. But so I don't even know why that's necessary. So you might as well just use the HD800 for gaming. It's really good for that, I think, because it's, it'll be good for virtual surround stuff, having a really good soundstage. But the Mobius, and most of the time when I'm using the Mobius, it's for like Bluetooth LDAC pretty much, because it's just the best sounding closed back Bluetooth headphone that I know of. Full size closed back, yeah.
What about the Panda?
Yeah, I heard the Panda briefly at Can Jam, and it just, I don't know, it wasn't that impressive. It sounds like a even warmer PM3 or something like that, like a PM3 with a lot of mid bass, I think.
Yeah, because it is Oppo, right? It's the same.
Yeah, it's basically the same kind of sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for video games, I think that the HD800 is great, but the Mobius is actually quite good for movies, I think, because it doesn't sound super thin. So like if you want a subwoofer like bass, probably going to get more of that in the Mobius. And what's kind of cool is you can use the Mobius with Netflix, for example, on Windows. And Netflix sends the OS 5.1. And if you put Mobius in 7.1 mode, it will take those channels and virtually position them around you. And it works. It's pretty fun. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think you could say one of them would work great for both of those, because the soundstage generally on Mobius is not that great. Like natural soundstage. Virtual surround. It sounds like virtual surround. Mm-hmm. It's never going to replace, having a good physical soundstage. Yeah, Panda is grossly warm. I think that's kind of what I got from it too.
I love that description.
It could be grossly warm and really good detail. I didn't hear any amazing detail either out of it. It definitely sounds like a very consumer-focused headphone, more so than how it's sort of being marketed, which is interesting.
Someone says for $299 it better have a consumer tuning. Talking about the Deva, I think.
But
compared
to other hi-fi men's,
and that's interesting in this case specifically, because he also mentioned in that same interview that he was optimistic about the consumer level pricing for more neutral sounding stuff because of the popularity of headphones like the HD6XX. No, not 6XX, yes, but HE4XX and the HE400i and all those. So, the idea that then there would be kind of like a shift in thought process for how to tune the wireless version of maybe, let's say, like a Sundara or something like that. I don't know if it's actually based on this Sundara or Susvara or whatever, but having something that's the wireless version.
Susvara. Yeah, right.
Well, that's what Android is saying, is that it's, or what Max was saying, but the idea of having something that's more consumer tuned for hi-fi men is actually a step. That's a new territory for them as well, because even their cheaper stuff for the longest time was more classically neutral. So
yeah, I don't know of any product that has like a plugging in Bluetooth module like that either. Like, not specifically designed for it. That's really new.
Yeah.
And if that thing is good enough, maybe it'll end up being the new best full-size bed phone.
That's amazing.
I actually have a use case for that. It's hilarious. In my bedroom, I've got what do I got in there? I got the Galaxy Buds in there, I got the Mobius in there, and I got the Porta Pro and the KSC75 on Yaxi pads with Parts Express headband. And I just grab one of those and just chill out with my phone. It's actually a use case for me, which is kind of hilarious.
Bedfi.
Yeah.
For a new offshoot website.
Will wireless ever be good? It will be if we can get even better than LDAC. LDAC already sounds incredibly transparent to me. I don't think I could tell the difference between it and lossless, most likely.
What if you had a wireless Susvara, though?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I was going to say. But it depends. Like, if I'm trying to listen to an LCD4 or Susvara 1266 using LDAC, I'm not so sure. In fact, Abyss had looked at Bluetooth, I think. I think they made a video about this, and they said that there just wasn't anything, because their headphones are so high resolution. It sounds like bragging, but they really are very, very high resolution. I think Resolve can vouch for that too. Mm-hmm. That Bluetooth just still wasn't quite there.
You wouldn't want to cripple your headphones by limitations like that. Even if it makes
when you're Abyss, yeah, I can totally understand that. They really are like a no holds barred company. They'll pay whatever it takes to build the thing. There aren't that many of those, so that's a really unique approach. That's what sets them apart, I guess. But Now I sound like I'm no longer. It's on my still an Audeze shell now. I mean, come on. But anyway,
it's hard to be an Abyss shill because, like, you need to have the whole stack and the
right.
You need to have the person there who puts them on your head properly, and DMS is there adjusting.
You also need to make sure that
right.
if you don't have the latest revision, it's bad.
Yeah.
Even though at one point it was considered awesome. No, that's bad now.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
But
I
for
mean,
the
lots of companies do that though. I mean,
for the Diana Phi though, I think
too.
you got to have the DMS version. That's
Oh yeah, whatever. Apparently, most of the change in the sound on that was actually the pads and the way they were constructed, which blows my mind because on his personal unit he removed a protective mesh on it too, and I thought that might have had a larger effect on the detail, but he claims it is mostly the pads, which is kind of crazy. So.
Also, though,
it's possible, but
you don't want people going out there with their $4,000 Diana Phis and ripping out the mesh because that's just not a good idea.
Yeah. Even the Abyss guys were coming up to me and they're like, "You know what that thing is, right? It's just like mostly the pad swap. Like we're not going to remove the protective mesh from headphones."
No.
But what's kind of funny about that is the Mobius that I have and some of them do, some of them don't have a protective mesh over the driver, which is weird. When you remove the pads, it's bare. You can see you can see the film. I don't know why that is, because some people have sent me images where theirs has the protective film, so that's odd. Maybe Audeze will say something about that. But anyway, you don't want to sell like that when it's an open back and there's nothing else protecting it, because there's a fabric on the driver. I mean, on part of the pad but.
Will DMS install the 1266 on my head for the $50,000 stack? Yeah, that's part of it. If you buy the $50,000 stack, DMS comes with it, and then he installs it on your head.
You need to fly to the U.S. and then come over to my place, and then when DMS is visiting, which actually he said he lives in because Abyss headquarters is like North New York, I think. He's expressed interest in bringing me like the line of stack and like the DMS.
Oh, there you go.
Like I would love for him to shoot a video in here and do all that. I think that'd be really fun. So hopefully that happens at some point too. Yeah. But obviously in the current situation, how has Corona not come up? I guess we just kind of got used to it by now.
Yeah, this is the new normal. I did want to mention with the AB1266 TC Phi TC, that the weight of that didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Like it's more the weirdness of getting the fit right, but like the weight, it's only like, okay, I say only, it's only like 600 grams compared to,
is it? I thought it was like 500 something. Yeah, I mean that's
maybe it is, but it's lighter.
No, I mean it felt like that. Yeah.
It's lighter than.
If it's not, then yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure. And also the headband strap it helps. It's not,
Oh yeah, it's pretty. It feels really. I mean that thing is seriously invincible. It's crazy well built. I mean, hey, I now work for Abyss. Congrats. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think like my ideal headphone would be the DMS Diana Phi. I think that would be my, if I could, because I'm a necklet. I like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
light headphones.
I am, as much as I like Audeze's sound quality and stuff. It's a real problem. The weight. I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, no, it's fine. You should just be able to deal with it. Yeah. I think that's kind of crazy. 600 grams is way too much. 735, that's out of control.
Yeah.
But what's really crazy about the Diana Phi DMS is that it gets a lot of variables into a range at once that you don't usually expect to come together at the same time, because it sounds like on the level of an LCD4 and SSFR resolution wise, and the frequency response sounds almost perfect, and it doesn't weigh very much while being a planar. It's really
decent soundstage for the size. Like it's
sounds
small
pretty
and
good too. I don't know how they managed to do that. It's pretty good.
It's one of those things that like, because I didn't like one that I reviewed before, but the DMS one, it's like, to me that does. We can talk about how ridiculous the pricing is for high end headphones and stuff like that, but that's one that nothing else is in that category.
That gets all of those things right at the same time. That's very unusual for any headphone, let alone that price.
Yeah.
So.
In any case, now that we're on to shilling various different brands,
exactly,
we need DMS in here for the next one, so we can
how is he not?
Can have Audeze, Hi-Fi Man, and then Abyss.
That's funny. Yeah, we can get DMS on for one of them. I'm sure
Yeah.
he's free, and then Shankar, we definitely need
Oh,
one
yeah.
of them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're coming up on like 2 hours here, so we should probably. Whoops, I dropped.
Yeah, it seems like the chat doesn't want to quit. This happens to me when I stream too. They never want to quit. It's great.
Well, I have to keep it short because I cut it up for podcasts as well, and they don't.
Oh
like it when
yeah,
you
that's a
upload
lot
after.
of. It's already a lot of length for
Yeah.
a piece of content. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If I had a nickel every time I heard that. Okay.
I have not heard the Orpheus, unfortunately. No.
Yeah. Okay. So let's leave it at that. I do want to mention to you guys that we'll be doing more of these kind of I guess live stream sessions, whether it's with Metal571 or other folks. And also, if you guys are curious about like where to bring some of these questions or thoughts if we're not around, obviously I'll try and answer what I can on the YouTube comments, but you can also visit the Headphone community forum and ask your questions there. There's people there who are super knowledgeable as well, so if you want to know like how something sounds or just see what somebody's impressions are, definitely check that stuff out. And for these specific episodes that we'll be doing the live stream sessions, as I just mentioned, some of them are now going to be in podcast form. So I've just taken the audio out, and I'll hopefully be doing some more, I guess, podcast related stuff, so that, I mean, it sounds funny because like these days nobody's really on the go, but if you want to listen to podcast, maybe you're in the kitchen doing dishes or something like that and you want to listen to a podcast, we now have that available on currently Spotify and I think Apple Music, iTunes. I don't know. I just submitted it, so I think it's now available on those platforms, and it should be available on more soon. So keep a lookout for those. Alrighty. Thanks so much to Metal571 for joining, and thanks for all of your guys' questions in the chat.
Yep,
and we'll see you guys in the next one pretty soon here. Bye. I'm just letting it run.
Yep. Come on. Finish up.